like to call the meeting to order. Is there a supplementary agenda this evening?
No, there's, oh, sorry. Yes, there is a report that was added late on Friday afternoon. It is with regards to the CAO, the arena report, the twin pad. It will be added to the agenda just in front of the Finance, Budget, and Information Technology Services item on the agenda, so just after items 16A and B.
Next item deals with the disclosure of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, or general nature thereof. The items before you. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest with agenda item 10B as Enbridge, which is the owner of Union Gas, has interests in renewable energy.
So noted. Councillor Oche, please.
So conflict of interest with 18B, dealing with my company.
Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
10B, the same item as Councillor Wesley. I have a parent employed at Enbridge.
Okay. Seeing no further conflicts, potential conflicts of interest, I wanted to, before I move into the announcements by the mayor dealing with the first item on the agenda, I do believe it's significantly important to recognize this week from May 27th to June 2nd is Paramedic Services Week that is being held across Canada. As we all understand the work that the paramedics do throughout our community of Chatham-Kent with its geographic boundaries of 2,400 square kilometers, it's important to realize that the hard work and dedication our paramedic service do throughout our own community, but most importantly is some of the initiatives that they're moving forward on this May 27th to June 2nd. It's caring for you, caring for the health of you, caring for the health of the community, and also making sure that there is a total community approach, care approach, that the paramedic services are looking at. You know, it's important that we realize that paramedic services for everyone's health and well-being throughout our community. During this week, don't be afraid to say, if you see a paramedic, to say thank you. Most importantly is to listen to the messaging that is being delivered from our paramedic service here locally, but across Canada, on how they're trying to make sure that we all have a healthier lifestyle throughout our community, and most importantly, as we're prepared as each day of our lives, and you never know if there's emergency services that are required. So to our paramedics, we wish you well during this week, and across Canada, we wish them all well, but most importantly is to our own residents, to pay tribute to this week as being the Paramedic Service Week across Canada. And again, on behalf of the citizens of Chatham-Kent, to our paramedic services, congratulations on a week well recognized, well deserved, and most importantly is to well educate us all on the services that we receive through our community. Congratulations. Our next item on the agenda deals with an announcement by the mayor dealing with the properties, and it's a consideration of a proposed is my sound system working okay? Declaration of a closure of part of a street in North Buxton, and the portion of the belongs to the property in consideration of closed legal description as part registered plan 165 in the municipality, part 1 of 24R 1028, being part of a identified property numbered 008720177, and on May 16th and on May 23rd, the notice was put in the Blenheim Tribune and on the municipal website. I now invite any person wishing to be heard regarding this item approach the podium, give the reasons why their lands would be adversely affected or their objection to this declaration of the close of part of this road allowance. I'll now call, is there anybody wishing to speak on it in objection to? Then seeing none, I would ask council to now move to the motion that is in the back of it, and there is a recommendation by council. I need a mover. Moved by Councillor Herman. I need a seconder, Councillor Verkutteren. And is there any comments or questions to it? Then seeing none, I would ask council now consider the recommendation now before you. Now we turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Our next item on the agenda deals with deputations. And Kim, you have our first presenter, please.
Well, Mayor Hope, members of Chatham-Kent Council, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here in my official capacity as agriculture specialist to tell you how important our agriculture sector is here in our community, or to tell you that agriculture is over a $3 billion economic driver here in Chatham-Kent. I am not here to tell you that tonight. But I am going to introduce to you some amazing youth who recently visited Chatham-Kent on a school field trip investigative study, especially focusing on the downtown core of Chatham. The students are from the Académie Saint-Cécile International School in Windsor, and they've come here tonight to share their findings. The downtown Chatham investigation came about for several reasons. Number one was an opportunity for the students to engage in real-world field data collection using geospatial tools, data from which students will answer a research question. Number two, a focus on livable communities, part of the Ontario Geography curriculum. Number three, Chatham was selected due to its size and proximity to the school. Large enough of a settlement to exhibit variation in its downtown core, and yet small enough to allow students to survey it within a reasonable amount of time. Number four, the support from the municipality of Chatham-Kent with regards to access to map data and personnel who could facilitate the project logistics. And number five, Mayor Hope personally invited this group back to present their findings to Chatham-Kent Council. How they got in touch with Chatham-Kent was through their teacher, David Bryan, who is a good friend of mine. David lives here in Chatham-Kent and has a keen desire in raising students' spatial literacy through beyond the classroom's experiences. Field investigations provide students a real-world context for their learning by developing a large range of hard and soft skills which cannot be gained from simply a textbook. When engaged in fieldwork, student interest, responsibility, and ownership of learning vastly improve. So Mayor Hope, Chatham-Kent Council, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you tonight Mr. David Bryan.
Thank you, Kim. Good evening, councillors and Mayor Hope. Really, the hand clapping is for the students who are going to come up here in a minute. I just want to say thank you again for your honor's invitation when we were here on the day doing our field work, and that this, in addition to the opportunity being here several weeks ago, is really adding to the students' experiences in their education. So without further ado, I'm going to invite up, I couldn't just ask for one student, or in fact, many students want to present, so we're going to have 5 people coming up here and hopefully give you a group presentation. So we have Yorgi, Ola, Ben, Alisa, and Theodora that are going to present to you their findings, and if you have any questions, please do ask. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So we came here on May 3rd, and we surveyed the downtown and how it to see whether it is growing, stagnant, or languishing. So the overview of the presentation of the overview of the data we collected is, so first we have an introduction, then we have purpose of study, then the data collected and observations, then after that recommendations, and after questions and answers. We are the grade 9 geography class from Académie Saint-Cécile International School. in Windsor, Ontario. Our names are Ben, Elisa, Ola, Kirara, and me, Georgi. So the support in the audience is the grade 9 geography students and Mr. Brian, our geography teacher. The purpose of our study was using field investigation skills and techniques to collect primary data to determine the condition of Chatham Central Business District, downtown. Our question was, is the downtown flourishing, stagnant, or declining? We hope to provide recommendations for improvement based on student observations and from surveyed respondents. Also, we wanted to gain hands-on experience with analyzing changes within a community.
Okay, so in order to find out our goal, to answer our research question, is the Central Business District of Chatham flourishing, stagnant, or languishing? We were going to collect 2 sets of data. So what we did is we compared the current building state of the 108 buildings that were selected in Chatham CBD with their states back in 2012. And to get the historical imagery, we just used the images taken by Google Maps Street View. And then the states of those buildings were compared to the states in 2018 that we actually surveyed in person. And from there, we attempted to draw conclusions. So we collected 5 attributes from the two times. So the first one was, is the shop occupied by by a business, or is it currently empty? Second one is there any evidence of change or improvement from 2012 to 2018? And is there any change of shop function between 2012 and 2018? So that's pretty much the role the business fulfills, so whether retail, education, or something like that. And what is the current function in 2018? And also, what is the current function order? And also, the other thing we did is we surveyed 32 either business owners or just visitors on the street. And from there, we asked them some demographic data, such as what their role was in Chatham, so whether they were a business owner, an employee, or just a shopper. And we also asked them what their opinions were on any changes in the Chatham CBD. So first, if they noticed any change, and if they did, what changes they noticed, whether it was positive or negative, and also what changes they would like to see in the future few years. Okay, so this is our first map that we're going to present. So this just shows our survey location. The blue polygons represent the 108 buildings in Chatham's CBD that we're studying. And those are pretty much along King Street. And for your reference, the large blue chunk in the bottom right is the Chatham Mall. Okay, so this one shows, all maps are based in 2018. So this one shows whether the building as surveyed in 2018 was occupied by business. So the red buildings show that the buildings are occupied by business during the survey time. Blue buildings mean that during the survey day, the building was not observed to be occupied by business. And green buildings, so that's 2 on the legend, mean that it was not possible to determine whether the business was occupied due to maybe blacked out windows or some possibly a header board, but nothing inside, or vice versa. Map 3 is change evident. So the dark, I realize that most of the buildings are slightly difficult to see, but for the most part, just the dark buildings that are easily visible, those ones it was noticed that from 2012 to 2018, their function changed, either their function or maybe their outside changed. So any visible changes, those buildings are in the dark blue, and then the light blue is if the buildings did not change. Next. Okay, map 4, type of change. So the very light buildings are the ones that did not change at all, and green buildings, so that's the lime green buildings, either they had just the like paint or signage, just exterior aesthetic changes, or they had a minor or major external renovation that was visible, and blue buildings were completely reconstructed. And I also do apologize, there is one mistake. The building in the very top left that is blue, that is the Canada Trust TD Bank, and it's listed as complete reconstruction, but I do not believe that is reconstructed. And so this is the functional order of the ground floor businesses as observed in 2018. So the very light buildings are low order, so that's first order, which only serve a short, very short customer base, short radius customer base, and rely on pretty much daily purchases or very frequent purchases by those same customers. Lime green buildings are the businesses that are second order, so medium order functions that serve a slightly larger customer base, so possibly the entire settlement of Chatham-Kent. And blue buildings are those that serve a much larger population base. So that, for example, the theater at the very left, that's a dark blue, and that could serve potentially the entire province if people are interested. And the final map, functional change from 2012 to 2018. So again, the dark blue buildings are the ones that were observed to have a functional change. For example, from a pawn shop to a bank, that was one of them that was noticed. And the lighter buildings that are slightly harder to see are the ones that did not change in function.
Okay, so while in Chatham, we surveyed 30+ citizens walking around Chatham in the downtown CBD. So we got many, we asked them many questions, and one of them was how often they visit the CBD. So majority of showed that they came to the CBD daily, which brings to the next question is why would they come to the CBD? So majority also show work. So that means majority of the people that came to the CBD daily, we can assume was for work. And another thing, we asked them if they were residents of Chatham. Majority of them said they were residents of Chatham or visiting other people. Since they were residents of Chatham, we can assume that they come here really often, and if they come here often, they would notice the different changes in the CBD throughout the past 5 years.
Respondent recommendations. Based on the 35 interviews shown, this is just a general summarization, is one, to make the downtown more inviting, to make it look more like it's lively out rather than, and make it more friendly for foot traffic. Continue the retro theme of this Chatham is a historical town, so pushing the historical concepts would be a great selling point. Getting more businesses to replace the ones that leave, because as in the investigation we noticed that there is a lot of empty buildings without any that are either for rent, for sale, and there's nothing really filling up the space. Local people need to get out and go out and help the city perform better. That locals should all pitch into one big community and help let this downtown area thrive. To finish the condominiums and the bridge construction, because I know during the investigation it was very difficult to walk across a few streets, and it was very inconvenient for a lot of traffic, whether it be cars or foot traffic, to get across due to all the construction. And a lot of residents would say that the condominiums and the bridge construction would both have very positive effects on the city, and to add grocery stores, more convenience stores for the sake of the residents living here. And the student impressions here, well, the positive things that we saw were the unique shops, that it's not like a mall, it's very spread open, and it's great walking outside and just being able to take in everything. The theme they're trying to implement, which is the historic theme, as mentioned earlier, along with the attractive historical buildings, the retro festival, which would bring a lot of foot traffic and a lot of business to the area. Welcoming people and inviting storefronts, which is basically how friendly people are and how inviting each store is and how quaint this town is, where it's not that big so it's overwhelming, but it's small enough to be able to be easier to walk around and just feel a lot more calm.
So as the grade 9 geography students walking through the Chatham CBD, we thought of some recommendations that could be positive. So more color on storefronts would potentially invite more people in. Accessories on the streets, such as umbrellas at storefronts, for example, like green spaces or flower beds. More places to eat at a cafe with Wi-Fi for people to do work and gather. To expand on the retro theme, as stated earlier. To make the Thames River more accessible and make the riverfront more visually appealing, more flower beds, clean up the water, etc. To upgrade the exterior of the mall, make it more visually appealing. Signage at the front entrance. Introduce some regulations to clean up the front unoccupied buildings. And in order to create more foot traffic, create a summer or winter festival that is unique to Chatham that people would come here for. Therefore, once there is more foot traffic, the stores can be fixed up and more stores can be opened, so therefore not losing business.
Okay, so now we're gonna have a question and answer session. So if any counselors or anybody would like to ask us any questions.
I'm going to ask, is there any counselors wish to ask questions of the presenters who have done the study for us? Councillor Carmen McGregor, please. Don, microphone's not working.
There we go.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, it's coming on now. Not so much a question, but I just want to really compliment you on the work that you've done in bringing your perspective to us and what you've seen in downtown Chatham. You know, when some of us live here and work in our different communities, you don't see things as openly, but to see your fresh and creative minds be able to go down and pull that together, I'm really impressed, and I'm very happy that you came and presented to us tonight. So that's basically all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Councillor Verkutteren, please.
Well, just a quick question. I'm very impressed, by the way. It's very nice. Are you involved with the BIA at all locally? Like, what inspired you to do this? This is what I'm asking. I just couldn't understand why you would do this. I just don't know if you were involved with the BIA or the Chamber of Commerce at all, or with your information. That's what I meant.
Just to clarify, you're asking about why specifically Chatham, or what kind of connections we have to Chatham? Well, as previously mentioned in that lovely introduction, Mr. Bryan, our geography teacher, lives in this area, and you can tell he deeply cares about this area and his hometown thriving. And he decided for our final project for school would be a real-life field investigation. And so then he set us up with people like the mayor and people in Chatham to be able to survey and study this area.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or do you have?
No, that's fine. I just didn't know what got you going on this thing. I just wondered, because we got a BIA, you know, and we have a Chamber of Commerce, and they're forever doing this in a way, I guess. So this is really impressive. Very, very nice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Further comments? Councillor Brock-McGregor, followed by Councillor Bondy.
Yeah, that was a great job, and to sort of work off what Councillor Verkutteren was saying, as a representative on the BIA, I'm sure that the rest of the members would be really interested to have you share their information with them, if you could forward them that presentation, especially the survey results. I mean, that's information that we're always looking for when trying to improve the downtown core. So thanks again for taking your interest in Chatham, and I hope you enjoyed getting to visit our community.
Councillor Bondy, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Thanks, guys, for the study. You know, frankly, our downtown's seen better days. If you would have been here 30 years ago, you would have been blown away for sure. But it's nice that you're very positive. So my question to you, that I just didn't see really referenced in the study, did you take into account the park, Tecumseh Park? that is basically connected to downtown, because it's pretty important. And frankly, it's seen much better days too. But that being said, it's really a hub for like the Rib Fest and things like that. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on how that comes together, because it really, if you live here, Tecumseh Park can be a big part of the success of downtown, because it gives a gigantic green space. I just wonder if you guys you really noticed it, because if you hadn't, then that tells us that we should do a better job of promoting it, because it's really not all that obvious when you walk by the cenotaph. If you miss it, you miss it. And if you did, then we have to do a better job of making sure people see it, because it's a pretty unique historic park. Thanks.
Well, we did eat lunch there, so it was a really nice green space area.
Well, then you saw it, so thank you very much.
See it.
I hope you enjoyed your lunch.
Councillor Van Dam, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I would like to congratulate the 5 of you for bringing this type of report to council. I especially liked how you did a bit of a historical analysis. You went back to 2012, looked at the scope of the buildings, the use of the buildings, the image of the buildings at that time, and compared it to today. So it was a bit of a report card, and I couldn't help but notice how our engineers were paying pretty good attention to what you were saying, as were all of we, because it's always a challenge, as you've identified, that in the course of time, businesses and stores leave. So my question to any one of you would be, how do you bring those stores back? And maybe a spin-off to that is, how would you bring them back to rural communities where there isn't a lot of foot traffic? It may not be a fair question, but you're young and you have great imagination.
Okay, so we found a few things. First of all, as we noticed a few things when we're walking around the downtown. So one thing first was that we did like the historical theme, but we maybe prefer if you possibly change up the colors a bit. Like, I don't know if this is correct, but I did notice, like, a lot of times when I was walking around, I noticed a lot of red on the buildings due to, like, the historical nature. It was a lot of red and blue, but possibly change it up, add some more green within the sidewalks. I do know that there are trees there, but possibly some more flower beds, because there is also the Tecumseh Park and also, I believe, Zontac Park or something along on the east side of by Retro Suites, but possibly along the street instead of beside and behind the Thames River. And also, like we said earlier, possibly make another, just organize another festival that's unique to this community, because that's what we believe it really draws people over. Because if there's a lot of communities that have the same sort of festival, people are normally just going to choose whatever is more convenient. But if you have something that's unique and they want to see it, their only option is to come here. So possibly a summer or winter festival that you could also use to reopen up the Thames River as well. Something hosted along there and open up the sides of the Thames River, add possibly some more sidewalks, brighten up the park maybe. Because the park also seems slightly empty. There were picnic tables and there was a play set, but a lot of it was just empty grass, and we feel that possibly add some more flower beds or something, more plants, and that could maybe brighten it up a bit.
As a follow-up, through you, Mayor Hope, I think that's a rather superb answer. And I just want you to know that for any one of you, there's tremendous opportunity in this field of work, because we're always invited to municipal conferences in Toronto and Ottawa and elsewhere. And this is a big challenge where people continuously search for answers, and I'm delighted by what you've presented tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Fluker.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to ask you, are you going to take grade 10 geography? And the reason I'm asking you this, because if you do, and I hope you get the same teacher, it would be very good a year from now if you notice any differences. You could perhaps do this in 2 or 3 days. The other thing that I'm very pleased about, and I agree with Councillor McGregor, I hear too many old people talking about how young people just I don't know what we're going to do with young people. I'm really glad you folks are out of town and not going to be running for municipal council in this area, because I think we would have quite a battle running against some of you. You did very, very well. I agree with Councillor McGregor. And being an old former high school teacher, I'm very impressed, and I hope you do take grade 10 geography, because I think there'd be some other activities that your geography teacher could put you on right here. Not just in Chatham. There are some communities we'd like you also to look at. I agree with Councillor Wallaceburg and so on. But that certainly would be an excellent project to have your perspective along with the perspective we get from our citizens and so on. But thanks a million for coming and doing it. Thank you.
Seeing no more further questions, I do want to say on behalf of Council and the rest of the residents, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. As part of our goal is to attract and retain more younger people to our community. Having you express a viewpoint tonight about what you feel is important is extremely important to us, as that's our goal. So I want to thank you very much for your independent view. It was a pleasure when you came and I had the chance to meet you, and I know not all the students are here, but I do want to say, you know, it's great to see you here tonight making the presentation. Councillor Fluker never taught grade 10 geography. I know that because he taught me in high school, so I know that never happened. But I do want to say that I think Councillor Fluker touched on something, and as you go forward, is to examine other smaller communities and how they are thriving. And I do want to say to the teacher, I think being up in front of this council and making a presentation, and I've seen a lot of people make presentations to us in 12 years, and I must say they did an excellent job, in my opinion, based on the presentation and based on their ability in front of the microphone. I'd give them an A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say one final thing is outside are the 11 different groups and their results. So they came to slightly different conclusions based on the data that they collected. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another presentation, which is via deputation that is being made by the Wallaceburg Area Wind Concerns. I'm not sure who's actually doing the presentation. Violet and Denise, are you both doing the presentation? Okay.
I have to throw a compliment to the group before they entirely leave. That was pretty exceptional. As a retired educator, I couldn't resist. Those are grade 9 students.
Yeah.
Amazing. So Denise and I are here on behalf of Wallaceburg Area Wind Concerns. We thank you tonight for your time and your attention. Recently, we've met with a few of the councillors and a few of the staff, and we've had an opportunity to discuss some of the issues with them, and we certainly appreciate the support that we've received. We believe we have some common ground, and on that basis, we have a few things we'd like to talk to you about tonight. So recently, March 23rd to be specific, we met with the Source Protection Committee, and they are a group that came out as a result of the clear direction from the Clean Water Act. We did a lot of research when we started to become concerned about water wells in the area. We read the Clean Water Act, a lot of supporting document, and we looked at a group that was formed as a result of that called the Source Protection Committee. This committee has a mandate to protect water wells. They have a mandate to identify threats, and they have a mandate to protect water sources. Wells are one of them. What they're trying to do is ensure that every person in Ontario has access to clean water. What we learned from them is that we needed input from the municipal level to both identify wind turbines as a threat and to elevate private wells into the protection of the source protection plan. Some of the benefits for Chatham-Kent would involve protection for any wind turbine projects in the future, obviously protection for the area that we're talking about, which is the Otter Creek area, and protection of groundwater quality in general. A couple of things I want to point out to you from the source protection plan is that under the Clean Water Act, significant drinking water threats are those that pose or have the potential to pose a significant threat. The objective of the plan is to develop policies to ensure that the activity ceases to be or never becomes significant. Also want to point out the vulnerability of an aquifer may be increased by any land use activity or feature that disturbs the surface above the aquifer. I would suggest to you that both of these things are in play currently with the situation with the wells in Chatham-Kent. Living documents, this is a term that refers to the type of document the source protection plan has come up with. What that means is they are meant to be updated and changed from time to time. And based on what we're learning and what we have seen happening in the area, we suggest that that time is now, and what we're talking about is making amendments to those documents. Denise?
So, I'd like to present a map from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change's Source Protection Information Atlas that maps the vulnerable aquifer zones. So you'll look on here, you see the pink vertical lines. On this represents the highly vulnerable areas of the aquifer. So using this map further, an overlay of the site plans from the East St. Clair and the North Kent 1 wind projects was laid on the map and indicates that there's 24 turbines in East St. Clair that are situated directly on the vulnerable aquifer. And beside it, North Kent 1, there's 20 more turbines on this highly vulnerable section. This may not strike you as sound groundwater resource management practices to construct industrial wind turbines on such a sensitive area. Reported contaminated wells are shown in the blue with the red star. 4 of the wells didn't have coordinates, so we weren't able to map those on the maps, but these are, the red ones are the contaminated that we know of, but we all in this room know, we've all heard the stories of other families that are not wanting to come forward and report their wells. So this atlas provides the capability of entering an address and viewing the details. So the address I chose over there in Caledonia, you can look in the atlas information and read the data on that, and it says highly vulnerable with a level of 6. That's your highest vulnerability. So some of you may be unknowingly very familiar with that location that I chose. It was certainly read about on social media as far as United States, Scotland, and Australia knows what Chatham-Kent is going through. And this family that is suffering with the contaminated wells. So again, you see the red of the wells, the blue exactly on the aquifer. So you've heard of well interference problems with the homes are experiencing and the lab testing showing the black shale in the water. So we're here today, we would like you to realize the true concern we are expressing at the thought of turbine pile driving and installation being installed so close to our homes if the Otter Creek project was to proceed. We're asking for your advocacy to protect a sustainable water supply for all.
Here are some things that we know. We know that our area has not encountered a series of earthquakes or other phenomena that would explain the well damage. We share very similar geology to North Kent 1 and Dover. Our proponent, Boralex, as well as ourselves, of course, has indicated our soil conditions are far, far from ideal for this project. Experts are starting to speak up. I'm just going to mention a couple. Professor Dussault from the University of Waterloo indicated he wasn't surprised to hear about the well problems in Chatham-Kent. There is reason to believe that it is the very low frequencies that disturb the aquifer, whereas the high frequencies have no effect. If vibration sensors are not picking up low frequencies, it would be difficult to make comments about the vibration. According to Dussault, pile driving emits the type of low-frequency vibration related to created by distant earthquakes, a phenomenon known to affect groundwater quality, groundwater wells. Professor Gagnon is the University of Windsor professor who has begun doing some research in the area, including looking at some rehabilitation support for the well owners. He is working on characterizing the sediments from the wells and comparing them to samples of the Kettle Point black shale from the aquifer. He's also looking at measuring the drinking water samples to help better understand the health risks associated with exposure to the shale particles. What we're asking you to do is employ something called the precautionary principle. Essentially, this is a principle that denotes a duty to prevent harm even when, when it is within your power to do so, even when all of the evidence is not in. Where do we go from here? These are our requests. Extend the baseline testing provided by the municipality to include the wells within the proposed Otter Creek Wind Farm area. Make a motion that private wells be considered in a cluster and protected as a water source in the same manner as other sources of municipal water. What we learned from the Source Protection Committee was that municipal water sources were included, the private individual wells were not, even though the Clean Water Act provides for this. We need to add this part. Utilize the precautionary principle and make a motion to investigate turbine installation and operation as threats to the highly vulnerable aquifer. Empower the Source Protection Committee to update their source protection plans and to request these changes from the ministry. Protect the Chatham-Kent community from current and future turbine developments that are or could impact our water resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leclerc, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to present a motion because of this presentation. First of all, Denise and Violet, thank you for the other night in Wellsburg. Councillor McGregor, myself, Councillor Foss, and Mr. Cooper, Mr. Blake, and Don Shropshire. It was, you know, under the circumstances, I wish we weren't there, but thank you for the respect you showed us. I know it's troubling and there are concerns. And again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being leaders in your community and the way you've been leading. It's very refreshing sitting on this side of the desk because it's, I understand the impact. And so in that note, Mayor Hope, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to Meredith, would you be able to bring up this motion that's I forwarded to you? Whereas Council is appreciative of the work being done by the citizen group known as Wellsburg Area Wind Concerns, and whereas Council is supportive of ensuring that all water wells receive baseline testing prior to construction of industrial wind turbines. I hereby move that 1, Council extend the baseline testing at cost to the municipality to include the wells within the proposed Otter Creek Wind Farm area. 2, Council direct administration to write to the province of Ontario to 1, protect water wells as a water source. 2, utilize the precautionary principle and investigate turbine installation and operation as possible threats to the aquifer in North Kent. And 3, protect Chatham-Kent from future turbine developments that it could impact water sources.
Yeah, that's fine. Just Councilor Clare, I just want to ask the question based on 2.2. You have reference to the aquifer in North Kent. Is that to the Otter Creek?
Could we include that in there? Yeah, but it is part of North Kent, so we could maybe change it to Otter Creek.
Definitely should include that. I just wanted to mention also that the distinction with what's in the plan right now and what we need to add is the individual wells. So we should be specific about that, and that's one comment that came through from the Source Protection Committee, that you'll probably have to do some very specific identification of the wells. There's certainly provision from it with the Clean Water Act, but I think you have to be specific about it. Yeah. And he can probably give you some guidance with that.
So Meredith or Mayor Hope, you want to change that?
Yeah, Meredith has already made the narrative change there. Before I proceed, is there a second to this? Councillor Carmen McGregor. Is there any questions, further questions by council on this motion that's being put forward? Councillor Van Dam.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. This is a notice of motion, correct? So when are we voting on this?
It's not a notice of motion.
It's not. So we have to
It's a
decide
motion
this
based
tonight.
on the presentation.
Okay.
We've enacted some of this stuff before. So we've enacted the testing, which we've done in North Kent. So it's not a notice of motion. It was done during the presentation time, which means it's a motion of direction. Councillor Solomon, please.
Two questions, Your Worship. The first is, by adding the words Otter Creek, is that limiting or expanding the area? And my preference would be to expand the area. I don't know why we would in any way limit number two.
Councillor Solomon, I may interject. It is about expanding the area.
Well, if it's all of North Kent, is Otter Creek not in North Kent?
Well, it's dealing specifically with the projects. You're absolutely right. It is part of North Kent, but I didn't want somebody just leaving it to be, well, it's hard because everything has a title. Yeah. The North Kent one had a title. Otter Creek has a title. I just want to make sure it's clarity is there.
I just don't want it limited to Otter Creek is what I'm saying. It should be North Kent
it's
1.
North Kent / Otter Creek. It should be a comma after that.
Yeah, or slash or something or other.
Yeah, it should be a comma after North Kent.
And my other question with respect to that is, that's today. That's the other reason I'm concerned about limiting it to Otter Creek in case there's future projects in North Kent, in the Dover part of North Kent, anywhere. I would think this should apply anytime there's a project.
I think it should apply to all of Chatham-Kent.
So do I.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, right now we have the proposals that are in there that are going on, and what this allowing us to do is to work with or move to the provincial government dealing with the source water protection based on what I'm reading. This will identify it. Future. The future is we don't know if the government who gets on after June 7th what's going to be what's what. So if this is embedded in the Ministry of Environment and Protection or Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, subject to what they do as the government goes forward on the 7th. So it deals with today's problems, which incorporates all of North Kent and the Otter Creek.
Well, I may move an amendment, but on to my second question, and that is in line 1. Council extend the baseline testing at cost to the municipality. What is the cost, and where does it come from? And is it recoupable from the project proponents? That's who should be paying for it.
Thank you, Your Worship. There were two types of water testing done with the North Kent 1 project. The first was a direction from the ministry to have the Samsung pattern group pay for the initial testing. Council heard back from a number of our residents expressing concern that there might be some undue influence. And when Council provided the additional direction that residents in the area would be eligible to receive independent testing, they could go to any one of the 17 certified laboratories in Ontario to have additional testing done if they chose to do so. I believe we had a pickup of 8 different residents or property owners that requested the additional testing, but I think that was what was being referred to. So the bulk of the testing, the pre and post water testing, I believe has already been an agreement from the proponent at Otter Creek, Boralex, to do the same type of testing as was done in North Kent by ACOM, and I believe what this would have referred to is the additional cost if someone chose to do independent testing from one of the 17 labs.
Okay, thank you, through your worship. Does that mean that line that says at cost to the municipality should say to be reimbursed by the developers? Because it shouldn't be the ratepayers of Chatham-Kent who pay for that. It should be the developer.
It's extending the same privilege we extended to the North Kent testing.
But it doesn't say that. That's all I'm saying.
What do you mean it doesn't say that?
It says council extend the baseline testing at cost to the municipality. Where does it say there that the developer is going to pick up the cost?
No, what I'm saying is this is what we extended to the residents of North Kent when the proposals came. If they did not want to go with what the company, the wind company, was sending it testing to, that they could choose from the one of 17 as Don indicated, and we would pay for that study, which we did extend that to North Kent, and what we're asking is to extend the same.
I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. What I'm saying to you is that we might pay for it initially, but it should be reimbursed to the municipality from the developer, that's all.
Okay.
And I'm going to move that it be amended to say that in line 1, and I'm going to further move an amendment that line 2, paragraph 2.2, say possible threats to the aquifers in Chatham-Kent, including North Kent and Otter Creek, excuse me.
Okay. So those
I agree it should be everywhere.
So those will be supplementary, those are amendments that will be placed after.
Well, if I get a seconder, they will.
Yeah, if you get a seconder, I need to say, is there a seconder to that? Councillor Van Dam.
Would I be free to comment just a little bit on that?
Unfortunately, we're in the debate of a motion here, so unfortunately presenters aren't a part of that.
With the amendments that are proposed, can they be separated, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any further on the motion or amendments that have been placed forward? Meredith, I'm looking at you to see if you are okay with the amendments that are being placed. Councillor Fluker, please.
Thank you. I will support the First Amendment of Councillor Solomon. The Second Amendment, we're all of Chatham-Kent. There is a wind project in Romney, Wheatley, that is started. They are in the process. All of that area, the farmers have paid for water lines in the last 10 to 12 years. The farmers, the residents have paid for the water lines. So water and wells are not an issue when you get pretty well, I'm going to say, south of the Thames River. So to say all of North Kent, there might be one resident that still has a well that he's had trouble with for the last 10 to 15 years. And he wants somebody, I don't want this to take place, or I want, and so on. So I really agree, because the soil in the Otter Creek, North Kent area is far, far different than what we have south of the Thames River, particularly in the Wheatley-Romney area. Far different. There hasn't been, and I'm looking closely at Councillor Oche, minimal to no complaints regarding wells. And of course, the fact that they have water lines with municipal water has made it much, much easier. So I won't support the Second Amendment, where all of Chatham-Kent should be done, but I certainly will support the Otter Creek, North Kent idea. I do agree, but I can't support where all of Chatham-Kent, but certainly the First Amendment that somehow or other we foot the baseline testing and so on. I have no problem with that at all. Thank you.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
I would wonder if a part of a solution would be to use the Ministry of Environment map, which identifies the fragile aquifer, and change it to not so much all of CK, but the identified fragile aquifer based on the Ministry of Environment, including North Kent and Otter Creek. And you might want that worded different, Councillor Solomon, but I'm just thinking if we identified the fragile aquifer as the identifier, as opposed to all of Chatham-Kent.
I'm looking at you because
I can only respond if you permit me.
I know, that's why I was looking to make sure.
Okay, thank you. My goal was, I don't know where the next project's going to be, and having listened to the presentation, precautionary principle that they put forward just really says do no harm, right? Find out first, do no harm, and don't wait to get all the evidence in. That would apply all across Chatham-Kent with respect to aquifers, which wouldn't apply in Councillor Fluker's position, because if you're on a pipeline, a water pipeline, you're not taking water from the aquifer, so you should be able to support it too on that basis. It's only where there's an aquifer that might be affected. That's about all I can say to it. I just think it should apply all across Chatham-Kent, because I don't know what, it makes sense for what you're saying with the presentation tonight, but what the presenters are saying is it should affect all of Chatham-Kent, and I can't find any fault in that. I just can't. I don't know where they're going next, and I don't know whether the next area might be an area that has difficulty with the aquifer.
Meredith, are we ready with the amendments? So I'm going to ask Council to consider this amendment that is being put forward at this time. I would ask you to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 11-2.
I will turn to the next amendment. And I ask Council to consider. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 10-3.
Now I'll refer back to the main motion with the amendments. And each councillor knows that there's been amendments to this main motion. And I will now ask Council, as amended version, and we'll wait for Meredith to retype it all, but as, is it all changed in there now? Okay, I will ask Council now to consider the motion before you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 12-1.
And thank you very much for your presentation.
We'd like to thank you very much for your consideration of this.
Our next item on the agenda deals with deputations as of 3 o'clock.
None were received.
Dealing with the consent agenda. So moved by Councillor Percuterin, seconded by Councillor Carmen McGregor. Any items of interest? And seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed to any, and it's carried. Our next item on the agenda deals with notice of motions. Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
I, Councillor Brock McGregor, give notice that I will submit the following motion for discussion and voting at the June 11th council meeting. Whereas the Putting Consumers First Act, enacted in January, gives municipalities the ability to limit the location and number of payday lenders, I hereby move that council direct administration to outline recommendations for a bylaw regulating and limiting payday lenders in Chatham-Kent, including requiring licensing of payday lenders, limiting the number of licenses within the municipality, requiring all payday lenders to post annual rates alongside current bank rates, require payday lenders to provide to all customers credit counseling information that has been approved in advance by the municipality, and that the draft bylaw and recommendations be presented prior to July 27th, 2018.
Further notice of motions. Councillor Caniff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, Councillor Darren Caniff, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the June 11th, 2018 Council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas Habitat for Humanity has a vision of world where everyone has a safe and decent place to live, access to safe, decent, and affordable housing is a basic human right that should be available to everyone. Habitat for Humanity has now constructed 4 homes over the past several years across Chatham-Kent. It has opened the Restore in Chatham, which helps generate funds to support Habitat for Humanity's home building program. And whereas the municipality could greatly assist with future Habitat for Humanity projects by waiving fees related to the development. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of Chatham-Kent waive the building permit fees, planning application fees, development charges, any other associated charges and fees, if applicable, for new construction or renovations for 1, Habitat for Humanity housing projects which are built and transferred to low-income families at no profit to Habitat for Humanity and or Habitat for Humanity administrative offices and or Restore which support their not-for-profit work in the Chatham-Kent.
Councillor Caniff, I was just listening to it. Friendly amendment, especially making reference to the DC charges. Might want to refer that to the PUC to examine the DC charges. I just make that as a friendly because there are $3,500. It's mostly for water and sewers, and that's in the commission's responsibility. So it may help.
We can do that.
With just for information, the DC charges should be referred to the commission.
Okay, we can add that in there.
Body.
Thanks.
Councillor Van Dam, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I, Councillor Van Dam, hereby provide notice that I'll bring forward the following motion at the July 16, 2018 council meeting for discussion and voting. That the clerk bring forward a report that would update our municipal bylaws through changes in the Municipal Act that would allow for electronic voting by distance for open session of council, as well as electronic voting by distance for members of council committees who cannot attend municipal meetings when they travel abroad.
Further notice of motions. And seeing none, let's deal with the next item on the agenda. Deals with tender awards, and let's deal with the first item.
Item 14A, tender award contract T18-165, Prospect Street Water Main and Road Improvements, Community Tilbury.
Councillor Fluker, please.
Very pleased to move that the tender in the amount of $1,733,242.82, including HST, for Prospect Street Water Main and Road Improvements in the community of Tilbury be awarded to Henry Hine Construction Limited, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the authorized agreement.
And it's been seconded by Councillor Oche. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, I would ask council now to consider the, whoops, sorry. Councillor Carmen McGregor, I apologize for that.
That's okay. I think it's that is the very last chart, and it has the description of the tenders. I would just like somebody explain to me, what are the approval fees? We have low tender with HST, engineering and admin with HST, less HST rebate, and then there's approval fees. What are our approval fees within the tender? They're a total of $2,300. I was wondering if it was a way of, Page 4 of the report.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So the approval fees that we identified in the table in the report are everything associated with like the MOE approvals and everything that we have to go through internally for this project. So the Ministry of Environment for the water main works and the application fees and everything that we have to put forward for.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Okay. Further comments? And seeing now, to ask you now to consider the recommendation now before you. questions to the clerk?
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 14B, tender award contract number T18-125, municipal bridge washing, 2018 to 2020.
Councilor Leung. Claire?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be pleased to move this recommendation.
It's been moved by Councilor Leclerc, seconded by Councilor Oche. Any comments or questions? Councilor Solomon, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Appendix A of the report, and I guess it's, do you need the number? It's the Kyle Drive over Thames Bridge. And I had a question on that. And is there anyone prepared to come up forward and answer it through Your Worship? This report, for those who, maybe at home listening to it, is about washing the bridges, and I take it it's with high power devices. I was going to say hoses, but it's probably more than that. Am I right on that first?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hope. That is correct, yes.
So the question I have with the Kyle Drive Bridge, it was refitted, repaired, repainted approximately 2 years ago. And almost immediately we brought forward complaints of rusting on it. I was over it yesterday, and the rusting is still there and it hasn't been fixed. And now we're about to apply water to it, high pressure water to it, and that's never good for rust. Well, it might knock some of it off, but it's not good for the paint around the rust. So where are we on either repairing that rust problem or having the contractor repair the rust problem at no cost, or what's the current situation? Because that's one of the heaviest traffic areas in all of Chatham-Kent, and therefore people ask questions all the time about why is this new bridge that we've just had done rusted? Before we start spraying it with water. Yeah, hot water. Yeah, you got it. Today. I ask these questions for you.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Okay, so the rusting concerns identified on that bridge, we have reached out to the contractor that was involved with the painting of that bridge. I'm not aware, or I'm not sure if the bridge has been repainted yet, or if what we will commit to do is following up with that contractor to make sure that it does proceed, obviously following this bridge washing that does take effect.
Okay, as of yesterday, it hadn't been repainted, unless they were out early this morning. And I'm wondering by the next council meeting if you could, it's not fair for me to ask you for a full update, but while we're on the water and before we start spraying it, it makes sense to get this thing accomplished. So is it fair to ask through administration that you provide that at the June 11th meeting? It shouldn't be a long answer, but.
Just with an update
Yes,
for when the bridge is going to be repainted.
Right, and please confirm for me that it'll be at the expense of the contractor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Noted, thank you.
Councilor Carmen McGregor, please.
I was just curious, as we had two bidders, one was rejected. Is it normal to have, and actually I think it's probably a good price considering the number of bridges and everything we have, but is it normal to have only one contractor that services an area the size of Chatham-Kent? Is that a normal practice? Is that what we've been doing?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. To my knowledge, even on the previous contract as well, there was again only two that actually put in for this, but again, the one was only successful. So on average, we're used to seeing two. In this case, just the one, with one being rejected only because of their bid deposit was, or their bid security wasn't provided.
Okay, and then I would ask, is it the same two companies maybe that wash bridges, and was the first one, the last contract rejected also? Because I'm wondering, like, are we properly getting the information out to the different contractors?
I'm not familiar with who the second contractor was last year, because the one that was successful from the previous contractor was again D'Angelo. But I'm not familiar with who the last one was. It was unsuccessful.
Okay, thank you. And do these bids go out into the paper, or how do we put our bids out for somebody wanting to bid on these contracts? Is it just on our website, or?
Yeah, so all of our bids are available on our website, and obviously they are made available to all the contractors through that process.
Thank you.
Seeing no further, Councillor Caniff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up on Councillor Solomon's comment, I've had a lot of people mention that as well. But if we go out and paint it, are we not going to, 6 months from now, if we paint it tomorrow, are we not going to have the same problem? It appears a lot of the rust is coming from kind of behind where two pieces of steel come together, and a lot of it is kind of leaking out. So we're going to have to be painting this every 6 months or something to cover up the rust? I guess if you could follow up on that when you come back with the other to determine whether we're going to have that same problem or not.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments now, I would ask you now to consider the recommendation before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Okay. And next item.
Item 14C, tender award T18-176, new animal shelter.
Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I'll move that the tender in the amount of $2.348,882, including HST, for construction of the revised 6,200 square foot new animal shelter, Scenario B, be awarded to Agra Urban Building, Inc., and that $820,305 of additional funding be provided from the strategic reserve to fund the project, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary agreements. I'll have a few comments if I gain a seconder.
Yeah. Councillor Verkunen seconds it. Just that in. Councillor Robertson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I think that we can all concur that the current property, although being well tended to by its new occupant, was left in a pretty derelict state for a significant period of time, certainly the 8 years. Well, the term that I've been in council during these past 8 years, and I'm quite certain that former councillors Sterling and Crew would suggest that it's been 12 years and longer. The community has got behind this project, without a doubt. I can't name another municipally owned building or project whereby we could ask for fundraised dollars and gain support in the manner that we have. This is outside of the norm of typical fundraising. I think it's been a tremendous response from the community. Upwards of $940,000 raised or committed, which really equals about 40 cents on the dollar for this build. I certainly know the number of times that we've received senior levels of funding for other projects, infrastructure typically, and I know that the council and the administration are overjoyed when there's an opportunity to leverage alternate dollars from the province or the feds for our infrastructure projects. We ought to be thrilled that our community has come to the assistance to raise the funds out of the goodness of their heart in a manner that we would be overwhelmingly in support of accepting dollars. So the significant amount, $940,000 committed, and the one challenge that we'll have, let there be no doubt, is that should we not proceed with this, you will never gain this kind of support from your community again in terms of raising these kind of funds for such a worthwhile project. And not only that, you'll place the donors who have put their money where their mouth is in an extremely untenable position as it relates to unwinding their donor activity with the CRA. They've committed to us. I think it's time tonight that we commit to them, we commit to the new animal shelter, and we finish this project that is 2 decades old and long overdue. Thank you.
Councillor Verkunen, please.
Yes, Your Worship. I've been waiting 15 years to see something like this happen. This was discussed 15 years ago. The discussion with the old one we had, we did some repairs were done at that time, and all of a sudden, I don't know, it backed away, and then we started up again. But I can certainly remember it's at least 15, 16 years ago that council all agreed that we need to do something, but nothing ever got done. So I'm really, really happy to see this happen today.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, and reading through, and I appreciate receiving the floor plans in advance to be able to look at this and put with the report. And I would just say I could agree with supporting scenario B. The one question that I have, the existing building that is in such derelict state, I'm assuming is also a municipal building, and I want to know what going forward, or maybe even from the past, if it was a municipally owned building, why would we let it get to that state to begin with? And two, how are we assured that it won't happen in the future?
John?
Mr. Mayor, so that's really a question about how the building got into its current state? I guess I'll reply to that by saying that we had a contract with a service provider to provide animal control and services, and in their care, unfortunately, the building it deteriorated. It did get very old. I think it's about 30 or 40 years old or older, so it did deteriorate. They simply told us numerous times that they weren't receiving enough money through our contract to keep the building in good condition. The new service provider, I'm happy to report, we've included a clause in their contract that requires them to take a percentage of their donations. They do have a lot of people donating to them as they care for their animals. I think it's 15 cents on every dollar has to come back to the municipality into a capital account that we hold for them, and then they're able to draw on that when there's required repairs to the building. So for example, if the air conditioner breaks, then they would draw from those funds. And I'm pleased to report that, they've only been there about a year and a half, and I think the fund is already up to around $20,000. I don't know if the clerk can help me with that number. Do you know? Or maybe Mike? In any event, I think it's around $20,000 in that fund, which I think is a great amount if that represents a percentage of how many donations they've had, and they're regularly remitting that to us at the municipality. So I've been watching that. And I think it's at a number now. Certainly if they get a new building, that number will climb, and they hopefully won't need to use it for several years, but that's our plan for having the building maintained going forward.
Lynn, would you like to comment? Because I noticed you kind of got up. Are you comfortable with it? Okay. Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
And I think it's great to have that in the contract, and we had a contract before. Is there a method that we will be frequenting occasionally to make sure that that is happening and that the building doesn't get in disrepair? Because I think we should, and it should be open to inspection by the municipality at maybe yearly intervals or something, just to assure that the proper maintenance is being taken care of.
I guess the question would go to Thomas and the asset management plan. Are you going to make it, or Tim, are you guys going to make it a part of your asset management plan and making sure that it's part of the fixtures and stuff with the building?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So if we are responsible for the building, absolutely we will. But if there's a contract set up similar to the last agreement, it would be the supplier's responsibility. So right now, we would be planning on incorporating that in.
John?
So, Mr. Mayor, as I said, so there's a fund set up that would be there, and obviously if there's a significant structural issue, that's not my expertise, so I would certainly be turning to Mr. Kelly and his team, Tim, and asking for their assistance. But our hope is that this fund that can be built up over time would pay, if we're building a new building, hopefully it won't need a roof for 20 or 30 years, but when that time comes, hopefully the funds will be there. And I certainly go on regular, like maybe twice yearly inspections of the building. I'll walk through the building, see how they're maintaining it, and that's our plan.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, that you'd be walking through that building once yearly or so. I would hate to see, and I know these providers are very good, but I would hate to be, Lord forbid I'm sitting here in 7 years, have have the provider leave and another provider come in and say, well, the building's in disrepair and we haven't been there because we had a contract to assure that that money set aside was actually being put to care of that building. So that's what I wanted to hear, was that somebody would walk through occasionally and just have a visual as it is our building. And I know we have a contract and they're running the building, but it's still a municipal building. So I just want to be assured that going forward, we won't let the same mistake happen that happened in the past.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, one other comment as well. I forgot to mention, we have an excellent, there's the current provider, PAWR, has an excellent board of directors as well. And I meet with that board of directors at least once a year. And, you know, Judy and I have a good relationship with them. And I think also they're there and helping to keep accountable the management team there. And they're the ones who are actually focused on helping to maintain the building. They're a group of citizens who volunteer their time, but good people in our community who are providing oversight.
And I agree. I just want to, like I said, and I think they're an excellent group, and will support one of these options going forward tonight. I just want to, like I said, I want to make sure going on the forward, it's our side of it that I'm concerned about, not their side of it, if that makes sense. I just want to be assured that we are going to have a visual every once in a while to make sure that our contract's being met.
Okay. Further comments, Councillor Van Dam?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. If I understand this correctly, point 2, you're asking council for an additional $820,000, which would bring this council's total funding of this project to just over $1.3 million from a strategic reserve that all of Chatham-Kent pays into and held in trust, so to speak. But my question to you, Mr. Norton, is, and for my own clarity, can anyone from any of our rural communities, if they have an injured animal or a stray pet, can they bring it to this facility in Chatham?
Mr. Mayor, I'll hand this over to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So currently we have different providers. We have 3 providers right now. We don't have a shelter in Ward 1, although it is a different contractor than what we have at the other ones, and we're right now renting a building from Lakeshore. So we definitely do see that if we have a shelter come into Chatham, it would definitely be the opportunity to utilize our own facility rather than pay another municipality for that type of shelter. We do take cats into the shelter from all areas in Chatham-Kent if the individual brings it into the shelter, so that is an option. And when future contracts come forward, you know, if the contractor believes that they can take on all of Chatham-Kent in the facility that we're providing, then that's an option also.
Thank you for that response, Judy. So the interesting point you made is when and if, for example, in East Kent, I know we use the Glencoe Animal Shelter, but should the current provider, once the facility is up and running, believe a couple years down the road that we can circumvent using outside sources such as Glencoe, then that would all be done in one facility. So anybody, let's say East Kent, West Kent, North Kent, South Kent, can bring an injured or sick animal or stray animal into this shelter and get treatment.
Thank you. So keep in mind that injured animals isn't necessarily within the mandate of our animal control contract, nor the PAWR's current mandate with their contract with us, but they also have a rescue type business. So we also, you know, Ontario OSPCA is still in the municipality with regards to cruelty to animals and so on. But a simple answer is yes, when we go through the RFP process and it can be tendered out, and Glencoe could apply or another contractor could apply and utilize our facility and have either one contract or utilize the building. So the options are there once we own our own building.
Okay, and through you, Mayor Hope, but we just don't know, we don't have a definitive timeline for when that can happen, because right now that hasn't been set.
So the the current contracts go until March of 2019. So we will need to go out for tender early next year. And when we go out for tender, we tender all 6 wards, and we have before allowed them to break it down into different wards or apply for all wards. So currently our current provider responsible for most of the animal control at this time is PAWR, and they're responsible for Ward 2, Ward 6, and Ward 4 and 5 at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Hope.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Just a question about the money that we're contributing. I guess my question is, there's an $820,000 ask for additional funding to be provided to fund the project, which I understand that. So my question is, when council committed the $560,000 way back when, why are you asking for so much more now? Which I'm sure there's a good answer, but I read in the report that all bids were higher than the projected budget. So was the budget for the project just way too low, or did the project grow, or?
Lynn,
I'm just wondering why there's like this additional, well, I'm not just the only guy asking, obviously. We got a couple emails today with people saying, you know, why an additional 820? Because it seems like it's a phased-in ask, right, which is a kind of easy way to get us. But I'm sure there's a great answer, Lynn, so I'll just be all ears for you.
Lynn, how would you like to answer that?
I'd be more than happy to answer that. When the project was considered, we did, as part of that process, there's an elemental cost summary that's done. That summary is based on what the current market in terms of materials is. It also is a process whereby the architects go back to the local trades and understand their costs. And so that budget was well prepared and well considered based on construction costs 6 months ago. $250 a square foot was a reasonable cost. It was generous in some cases. When the tenders went out, that was not the case. Construction costs are significantly higher. You are really at the mercy of both material costs, which have had significant increase, and the trades. The value of that has gone up to $360 a square foot. So 6 months later, the project is that much more expensive. I can assure you that there are absolutely no frills in this building. It's concrete block, wood construction, aluminum cladding. We've decreased the the footprint of the building and tried to, in our second revision, most certainly make it the program scope smaller. As a comparator, because I think it's helpful for council, when the hospice was built, it priced out at $234 a square foot. That included both the facility and a 16,000 square foot parking lot. As a comparator, now it's 6 months later, here we are. That's the answer.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So basically just the construction costs have gone way up in 6 months and therefore the shortfall. So while I've got you here, Lynn, yep. I know Councillor Robertson was very complimentary about the fundraising efforts of the community. So I'd like to ask you, because that was your job, were you satisfied with how much money was raised? Was there actually like a projected goal like United Way, and did we meet that or surpass it, or was there a goal? Because I'm sure there's a good answer for that. I don't know it, but I'm just curious.
For you, Mayor Hope, absolutely. There was a project goal of $1.5 million, and we were there. Unfortunately, again, back to our tender reality, which was 100% higher in terms of cost. We are not there, and the truth of the matter is that there's nothing to say that those costs won't continue, and so back to council to say, let's get it done.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of comments. I share the concerns raised by Councillor Bondi, and I think we all kind of feel that way when project costs come in higher than what we expect, and the taxpayers are asked to contribute more dollars. And I also agree with the concerns raised by Councillor McGregor, because that building, which is no fault of anybody here tonight, should not have ever been allowed to get there. The one comment I did want to make, though, is I think that what gives me a lot of comfort is the current operator, which is PAWR. And I'll just tell you a little story about how well it can actually work. We had this stray dog come by our house. He came from quite a ways. And he was a well-behaved dog, and he had a dog tag on him. So I searched around for the number. It took me a little bit of time to find it. Called PAWS, and they had the wherewithal to be able to look up the dog tag, told me where the owner lived, what the address was. I picked up the dog, put it in the car, took it to the owner's house, put him in the back fence, closed the gate, and I don't think the owner even knew the dog was gone. So they are a very good operator, and I have a lot of faith in the fact that we do have a new operator there, and I think I feel very confident in their abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Brock McGregor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple questions. Obviously, we are taking 3 dog intake kennels away. Are we going to be in a position where we're going to need 3 dog intake kennels later on?
Through you, Mayor Hope, just for some level of comfort, when the new building was proposed, we met with the previous provider, OSPCA, Humane Society. We included Windsor's numbers and we looked at PAWR's current numbers in terms of intake, and we believe, based on those numbers and those patterns, that we will be able to meet all the needs of Chatham-Kent with the current structure.
For everything that we're losing here, as well as parking? It looks like we're losing 7 parking spots. I know right now it's pretty crowded at the other place.
Yes, I will tell you the truth. We would love to have more parking, but we are incredibly mindful of the cost of the project. And I think Bruce Warwick said it better than anyone else could. We put our money on the inside of the building where the function of the building matters more.
Now, and we could always add parking, I'm assuming. There's quite a bit of land there.
There's 3.25 acres, and there's we've considered with engineering the ability to add additional parking when we have a landfall of cash. I'm assuming we're still going to do a little bit of fundraising. Is that correct? Through you, Mayor Hope. Absolutely. We have the next phase of our project is to work on FF&E, so that project, that fundraising will continue, and we have grants out there, but we're anxious to get going while it's suitable building time. So yes is the answer.
Okay. I've heard from a few people who are quite upset that we're losing as much as we are after we told them what they were going to get. There's not much we can do about that other than spend another $500,000 to on top of the $800,000, which would make it 1.7 million out of Chatham-Kent taxpayers' pockets. I guess the only thing else, has this gone through to the Ontario Minister? Have they seen the design of the new design? I know we had it checked out by them, the first design. It was reviewed by the Ontario Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, as they have the ministry in charge.
Yes, they have reviewed it, and yes, they believe we're compliant with their requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Pleased to support the recommendations tonight. I have had a few questions, over the past months about this project, and I think it's very clear here tonight that this isn't an external project. This is our project. So this is a piece of municipal infrastructure. It's municipal responsibility, and we're receiving community contribution towards it. And that's the difference between this and some of the other projects that we're asked about often. So I think it's reasonable to repeat that and make sure that that's a message that's out in the community, that this is something that we own, this is something we need to do, and that we've been very fortunate to have a community group step up to contribute towards that need.
Councillor Selman, please.
Thank you, Worship. This is a project, I agree with the last comment. This is a project that is a municipal project, and it's not something that's coming to us new tonight. I mean, this is something that's been going on for much longer than just the period of time that my friend spoke about. So I'm going to support it, but I want to get clear the numbers, because that's something I don't understand from the report. The tender amount is $2,348,000, let's say $2,349,000. And on the first page, you show that you received 1.5 million, but then you've had expenses of almost 210,000. So that should leave you a net amount that you need to subtract from the 2.349 million. And it's much larger than 820,000. In fact, it's almost 200,000 more than that. There must be an answer. I don't know what it is. So let me do that again. The remaining funds that you have available to put to this project are roughly 1.3 million.
Yes.
And you've got a tender of 2.349 million, which is more than $1 million a difference, and you're only asking for 820. So probably there's an answer someplace, and maybe it's a really simple one, but I don't see it.
Mike?
Through your worship, it's the HST rebate.
Oh, so you really don't have enough right now, but once you apply for your HST rebate, you're telling me it's going to circle back in and make up for it.
Right.
Okay. So my next question is, I want to make sure that you're getting the amount of money that you need, and that you're not, that much as I like to see you in on many occasions, that you're not coming back and asking for anything more. We've experienced that on a lot of other projects. Many times being told it's the last time I ever asked for any money. So assure me of that, like others have, but tell me why this is the right amount. And it's not sometimes we get cost overruns, and that's, you know, I just want to make sure you're getting the right amount at the right time.
You know, if I had my way and my boss wasn't sitting behind me, I'll keep you posted on that number, and we'd love to have 2.9.
My bosses are out there watching right now, all 44,000 of them.
Here's what I believe we've done. So I'll put as much assurance as I possibly can. We've been meticulous in trying to understand the costs and the design. We've done as much due diligence as we're able to do at this point in time. Certainly, we've done as many pieces as we can, and I believe Tim would concur with that. We don't believe, because the building is so bare bones, there's just not a lot of fluff in the building, and so we believe that we've managed the cost as best we can. I do think it's important to understand that we have considered, as part of the project total, there is $542,000 worth of site development, and we've done that with the intention that that will ensure the municipality, should they choose to further grow anything on that site, that all of those things are up to date and current and won't ever have to be redone again, because there'll be new servicing to the site.
Good, thank you. I want to make sure you're getting the right amount, and I'm also encouraged to hear that this isn't the end of fundraising.
Through you, Mayor Hope. No, it isn't, and I will take a little liberty to suggest that the community has been hugely responsive and supportive of this project. It is a difficult project when it's a municipal project and private funds are being asked. We do have donors sitting in the room tonight, and for that, I think it's really important to both acknowledge and to thank them, because they have made a choice to support this shelter over all the many other important choices within the municipality.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to see that we're going with scenario B, and I think it's a good mix of what we need and what we can afford. One of the complaints rather of the old building, not only that it was old and that it was run down, is that it was really, really small. So I suppose, and then it wasn't designed to handle what it's handling today. So I guess my concern, and it's more of an architectural question, and you've kind of touched on it, but down the road, how hard will it be to extend and expand, say, a scenario B into a scenario A?
So, thank you, Mayor Hope. I just knew that somehow I was going to get to talk. That's certainly something that we had talked about during the efforts that we had made as a team, Lynn, myself, Judy, to meet with the architect and so on, and the contractor, the low bidder, to try to come up with a scenario that would work. The question is, can it be added on to? Of course it can. It is a doable thing to add on. What exactly that add-on may take shape, how much it may cost, would depend on the need and the willingness of council to fund and so on, or the donations received. So the answer is yes, it can be added on to. Similarly, earlier, if I might just add to Councillor Thompson, one of the questions I think Councillor Oche asked, with respect to the parking lot, we made civil engineering changes to the parking lot, such as eliminating curb and gutter. Those were changes that I suggested actually, and that we came up with as a group, again, in an effort to meet the need by getting paved proper parking, but not necessarily having barrier curbs in areas where we didn't necessarily need them to keep, cars. We put them where we need it to keep cars away from the building and so on, but not necessarily away from the building and whatnot. So, and those changes were $50,000 or $80,000, I believe, which contributed to that 500 in reduction.
Okay, just I guess just for a little bit more clarification there, because I like what you said. The current building was added on to in a way that really doesn't lend itself to looking like it was added onto so much as another building was kind of slapped down next to it. And you can build buildings in a way that it is easy to add on to the footprint so that it doesn't, from a functionality and from a visual standpoint, it doesn't look like it's been slapped together and patched together. I guess that's kind of what I'm asking.
So the existing building, I'm not familiar with exactly how it got there, even with my past City of Chatham experience, but it was very much sort of just evolved on the site and so on. It's very, also don't know if you would refer to that as what we call a pre-engineered structure, like some of the ones that you move there or would put there today. Scenario C that we didn't recommend, but we considered just for council's comparisons, would be a building like that. This building, as Lynn said, is a basic design, but it is a design that is easily added to, can be modified, and is sort of something that will move forward into the future and can be added or made larger. So we're very comfortable that that can happen if and when we get to that point at some point. And I can definitely tell you, was out there, did some site layout as well. There will be room for that.
Okay, your comfort has comforted me. Thank you.
Further? Councillor Herman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I congratulate everyone and your efforts in all this, all these months and time and initiative that our community, our volunteers and everything is so important to our community. And I think this project is one of those ones that I've experienced in Blenheim when we were doing the addition to the Gable Reese Rotary Pool. The longer it takes to get a project completed, the more the money will cost. And it just seems the cost of lumber, it is atrocious. And every time we wait another year, it's going to go up and up and up. So I think it's important. I thank you for bringing this report to us, and let's get this done. Just one question I have, and I know with Plan B being a little scaled back, there's some things that may concern me, I'm not sure, and that's when it comes down to the elimination of sidewalks and accessibility. Is that, did I read that there? I thought I did.
Through you, Mayor Hope. In terms of accessibility, absolutely not. The building is 100% accessible, so no concerns there at all. And in terms of things that were removed, they neither affect the function nor the functionality of the building.
So where did I read sidewalks? Was it for at the road, maybe?
So the sidewalks that were removed were on the other side of, so we changed the sidewalk configuration to get into the building, but not from an accessible standpoint.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Thanks very much. I'll be supporting this.
Seeing no further comments, before we ask council to consider the motion, I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, to Art Sterling and Marjorie Crew, thank you very much for taking this initiative on. Again, as it's been mentioned around the table, this is a municipally owned structure. You've taken the initiative, you went out and got money. As Lynn indicated, there's a lot of projects out there that people could be diverting their money to. And you did an excellent job at making sure you were able to be out there, raise the profile of the need in the community. And I want to say thank you very much for that. To Lynn, you've done an excellent job at hustling. I know many a times you've walked by my office to see if the door's open. When it's open, you just walked in, which is okay. But you've also bent my ear a number of times on some of the issues during this project. I want to thank you for your commitment in making sure this project becomes a reality. And I also want to say thank you to the donors, because I think it's really important. When you look about what's going on around Chatham-Kent, there's a lot of things that people could be putting their money for. And I just want to say to the persons who have donated towards this campaign, thank you very much for your belief in the organization, the group that has put this together, and thanking them for their contribution of making this a success, hopefully. At this time, I'd ask Council now to consider the recommendation that is now before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-1.
Our next item on the agenda deals with Community Human Services. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 15A, tenant engagement and satisfaction in public housing. Your Worship, we have a short presentation by Kristen Williams, the Manager of Tenant Relations.
Kristen.
Mayor Hope, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be here this evening to provide information to you relating to two priorities of Chatham-Kent Housing Services. Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. Apologies for that. I wanted to provide you with information relating to housing services. We looked at two of our priorities that were set in a 5-year strategic plan. That plan was set in 2012, and two of the priorities were tenant satisfaction surveys and engagement, and then also looking at transition to smoke-free buildings. We felt they were both very important. We were able to actually accomplish both of these in 2017, so we want to provide the results of that for you today. So in 2017, we were able to conduct surveys with our tenants across Chatham-Kent. So we did go out to all of the areas in Chatham-Kent that our public housing is available in. So from Bothwell, Wheatley, Blenheim, Tilbury, Ridgetown, Wallaceburg, and we met with tenants. We also felt that beyond just surveying our tenants, it was important to engage with them. So we wanted to hear their voice. We wanted to hear what was important from them, and we wanted them to be a part of the process. And we also recognized that this aligned with the CK Plan 2035. This slide is a slide just displaying tenant engagement meetings and what we were hoping to survey tenants about. So we were looking at areas of safety and how they felt about their units, the application process that they go through, as well as maintenance requests that they may have, and their overall satisfaction. And we wanted to look at how they felt about communicating with housing services. This slide shows you the client type that are living within Chatham-Kent Housing Services. So you can see that a large percentage of the tenants that we have are single tenants or seniors, and a small percentage are families with dependents. The response to the survey, we had 69% of those were single adults. A very small percentage were families. So we know that as we continue this process in future years, we will want to focus on how we can increase the response from families. Overall, the tenant satisfaction was very good. So we had a 97% satisfaction rate. That's a quote from one of the tenants. Tenants not only completed the surveys, but they provided a lot of information at the meetings. They also spent a lot of time working with each other in terms of what they could do together to help some of the barriers that they face. So I know you're all aware of transportation barriers across Chatham-Kent. This was a great opportunity for people to speak with each other, share rides, determine how they might go about that in the future. So that we were very happy to see that as well. People are overall very satisfied with their unit. They feel that their rent is very fair. 84% feel safe and secure. We certainly focused on the reasons why tenants might feel unsafe and what we could do to increase that safety. The service satisfaction, so looking at the application process, looking at reporting maintenance and overall maintenance service. Overall, the satisfaction rate is very high. Common themes that we found from conducting these sessions were that there are areas that we can focus on. So safety is really important to our tenants, building maintenance is important, accessibility and communication. So we've taken the information that we received from these surveys and we've shared it with the management team across housing services, and they in turn, or each of us in turn, are working with our teams to look at how we might be able to address some of the concerns that were brought forward or improve service. So the key findings, as we outlined, were safety, building maintenance, communication, and accessibility. We know that the attendance rate was low. This is the first time that we have surveyed tenants since 2001. So we will look at other ways of ensuring that we communicate well to get tenants out to attend these meetings. We did hear strongly from tenants that they would prefer to attend a meeting than to just fill out a paper survey. So we have decided that our biannual meetings will occur for that process. Tenants did share very positive comments as well. They also engaged well together, and we saw a lot of really interesting things. So we met with tenants that have been living in housing for 33 years. We met with tenants that have been living in housing for 4 months. And we saw tenants speaking with each other about what they might do to create in the multi-dwelling units more of a area where they can support each other. So they're looking at doing a lot of things like social hours, at some Thanksgiving Day dinners, picnics, that kind of thing, and we'll certainly support them. The other part of the presentation today.
Go ahead. I'm just going to do them both.
Sorry, the second part of the presentation is relating to transition to smoke-free housing. So when we endeavored to go out and meet with our tenants, we also looked at the other priority which we wanted to accomplish, and that was moving towards smoke-free housing. We know the reasons why we need to move there, and certainly for health reasons, we look at secondhand smoke, increasing risk of heart disease and lung cancer. We know secondhand smoke causes acute respiratory problems. We know the exposure secondhand smoke harms children as well. So we decided that it would be a great opportunity to also present this at those tenant meetings. We're very fortunate in that our partners in public health, who are here with me today and able to answer questions if you have questions at the end, were very supportive in helping us to develop a survey, and to go a bit further than that, they also attended the meetings with us so we could provide supports, because we know that when people live in rural areas, sometimes those supports are hard to access. We also know that smoke-free housing is certainly an initiative that we're seeing across the province. So provincially, the new standard lease does include a clause about smoke-free, and Ontario smoke-free housing certainly feels that a policy doesn't prohibit smokers. So we're not really taking away rights from anyone. We wanted to make sure that that was really clear with our tenants. When we presented to our current tenants, we also knew that they have signed a lease. So we did consult with legal, and we looked at the Residential Tenancy Act, because we wanted to ensure that we were being responsive to the lease that they had signed, and that legally we weren't removing that right from them. So those leases will be grandfathered, and we made that clear when we went out to speak to our current tenants. Oops. Sorry. I'm going back. One of the concerns that we have with smoking as well is the cost to the municipality as well. But beyond that, and most importantly, is the safety of our tenants and our residents. So we have had fires in our housing units, and some have been townhouses. We have had family units that we've had fires in. The repairs are quite costly. And you can see in the first two pictures, these are fires that have occurred in our units. In the second two pictures, this is showing you what smoke damage looks like. It's very significant over years, and the cost of redoing those units is actually, it can increase by $1,000 to $8,000. We've had to replace floors, cupboards, remove drywall and replace that as well because of the damage. Now, that being said, we also have to think about drifting smoke. So we know that your neighbor may smoke and you may not. And we're really looking at the rights of those individuals, because those tenants have rights, and they have a right to a smoke-free environment. So what we're hoping to do is move towards smoke-free. We've set a date for that. We surveyed the current tenants. We had a good response rate. We had 37% response rate. We did have a lot of tenants come out to the meetings, and many were smokers. We know that we have a high rate of smokers within Chatham-Kent Housing Services as well. People were actually very open to smoking cessation and resources, and so we were very happy to see that at the meetings. We know that the behaviors of smokers, there's a 50% smoking rate. What was reported in the survey was that there was 5% of individuals that were using marijuana. We feel that this was likely lower than what is actual based on legalization happening in the future. So we think that we would hear differently if we were to survey a bit down the road. We know that we are much higher than the provincial average in Chatham-Kent housing in terms of smokers and what is smoked daily. We did have quite a high rate of individuals that were interested in quitting, so that was good to see. We did also offer to current tenants, if they wish to change their lease, that we could amend that lease to a no smoking lease so that we can arrive at our goal sooner. We asked tenants where they would like to smoke and where they do smoke. So most tenants that are smoking in their living room and on their balcony currently. There is no smoking in public areas as per Chatham-Kent bylaw. So the grounds and the common rooms, halls, currently are smoke-free. We have one building in Chatham-Kent that is smoke-free, and that's Riverview Terrace. So it was a new build, and we were able to accomplish that through that new build and new leases. What we're hoping for the transition, or what we will be doing through the transition, is we'll be creating areas that people can go to smoke. So there'll be designated areas, and this is to help with the transition, hopefully encouraging current smokers to go there as well, to alleviate some of the drifting smoke in the units. As of July 1st, we'll be implementing smoke-free leases, and so all leases in Chatham-Kent will be smoke-free. We have notified everyone on our wait list, so people are aware of that, and they do have choices, so they can choose other options if that's not a choice that they want to make. But people are aware that that change is occurring. These are some of the comments that we heard from individuals who were not smokers. So we received a lot of feedback from individuals who were not smoking and how they felt about how their health is affected. In the end, we asked people if they were supportive of a smoke-free policy, and you can see that almost half were supportive of that. These are just other comments that we heard from individuals as we surveyed, and we spoke with individuals as well. We were encouraged by hearing some individuals that had quit smoking, sharing their stories with others and offering to support them in housing services, and of course with public health offering smoking cessation supports. We thought that that was very helpful to tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain questions on both reports. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going back, I think what you're doing with the tenant relations is a great thing, and I mean, that's good to get that kind of feedback. One thing I would suggest that maybe add to it in the future, and not to say that this is a huge issue, but I do get complaints from some of the neighbors who butt up to some of the social housing, and they have some concerns. And you know what? And I consider neighbor to be only those that butt up to the social housing. It might be a good idea at some point to do a survey of some of the neighbors and just see if there's you might get more than what you bargained for, but it still would be a good exercise, I think, in relationship building to ask them if there's some little things out there that they like to see different. And a classic example when you talk about being smoke-free, if you're going to designate an area for smoking, well, I'd be thinking about where my neighbors are as well, too, and take those things into consideration. But it would be nice to see some sort of survey done of the abutting landowners just to get their feedback as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
We did take that into consideration in terms of the locations. So location of smoking designated areas is very specific as per bylaws, but we also considered how this might affect neighbors because we don't want to marginalize the individuals that we work with either, and we want neighbors, of course, to enjoy their neighbors as we would as well. Take into consideration your suggestions as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor. Thank you, Kristen. Both very, very good reports and lots of details. Just had one remark and one question. I'll give you the remark first. I was happy to see that with the cannabis regulation coming into play, that smoking is smoking and will be considered the same in our units. So I was happy to see that as we will have to move forward on other bylaws to include those in other areas of our municipality. The one comment you made, you said there were tenants living in the units or the areas, some as long as 33 years, some 4 months and up to 33 years. Do we work with tenants to, like, are they meant to be long-term units, or is it something where we try to work with tenants to encourage them to get themselves into like their own home housing situation, or is it something that we monitor on a regular basis? Some just choose to stay and their rent changes based on their market or their income?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, very good question. We have our numbers in terms of seniors is very high, and the seniors that are living in our units are living on a very low income. They seem, from what we've met in surveys, to really want to stay where they are. So they've established friendships, they have social gatherings, that kind of thing. We have other individuals who are working towards furthering their employment, furthering their education, and certainly supports are put in place for that. And yes, their income changes over time, and they do eventually may move out to other areas that support them better.
Thank you. Seeing no further, Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be very quick. I also found interesting as you move to your no-smoke leases, there's going to be 2 exceptions. Anybody who has a medical marijuana permit or permission and therefore can smoke medical marijuana, that's exempted. They'll still be able to do it under your leases, correct?
They currently are.
And even after that, they will be too,
Yes.
correct? And the other is if you happen to, for cultural or spiritual reasons, as an Indigenous person, and I don't know how far that goes, probably whoever qualifies as an Indigenous person, which would be Métis and as well, they can use tobacco however they see fit in their unit, correct?
So,
and by that I mean they can smoke it or they can do other things with the tobacco.
well, we're respecting the traditional use of tobacco.
That's what I meant. I
so
didn't
that is
describe it
different than recreational use of tobacco, and yeah.
I think I said cultural and spiritual. They don't.
Sure.
It's not necessarily used only for smoking.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But it can be used. The person who qualifies can smoke in the units, and you can't prevent that. Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Seeing no further comments, I need a motion to receive the tenant engagement satisfactory survey. Moved by Councillor Wesley, seconded by Councillor Brock McGregor. All those in favor? Opposed to any, and it's carried. Next report deals with the transition to smoke-free buildings. It's moved by Councillor Brock McGregor, seconded by Councillor Caniff. All those in favor? Opposed to any, and it's carried. Next item on the agenda deals with community development. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 16A, amendments to the Consolidated Business Licensing Bylaw, rental dwelling unit.
Councillor Fluker.
Very pleased to move this, Your Worship.
It's been moved by Councillor Fluker, seconded by Councillor Verkutteren. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, I would ask Council now to consider the recommendation now before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-1.
Next item on the agenda.
Item 16B, election candidate information requests. I believe our clerk has a few remarks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council may note that this is an information report with no recommendations, but it was included in the regular part of the agenda. This is simply for council and the public's information. Now that nomination period has opened, it tends to attract a lot of questions from candidates, and this report is just to clarify the process and how to obtain information.
This is only an information report. Any comments or questions? Councillor Brock McGregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hope. I was just wondering when questions are received from candidates and an answer is provided, if we could post that on the website so that any candidate could access that information, see the question that's been asked, and see the answer that's been provided.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In previous elections, we have had some candidate resource web page available for all candidates to look at. And it included municipal links such as the strategic planning, municipal budget, financial statements, master plans, and the official plan, and so on. We are hoping to get that up by the end of the week of those simple links. And if there's other links that we can add throughout the questions and we think it's applicable for all candidates, we will definitely add that.
Seeing no further comments, motion to receive for information only. Moved by Councillor Brock McGregor, seconded by Councillor Oche. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. Next item on the agenda dealt with the supplementary agenda item. And I'll turn over to...
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. The first thing I'd like to do is just to express to council and also our viewing public why this report is coming down now. I recognize that a multi-million-dollar potential spend is as welcome as a skunk in a garden party 5 months before an election, but let me start with that. First of all, we made a commitment on January the 29th of this year to come back to council with an update on our arena plan, and so we had to do that this spring. The other major issue that we have spoken about with council is a project of this nature would likely only be undertaken if we were to be able to take advantage of senior government funding. So typical arenas in our neighboring communities have received up to 2/3 of the funding from senior levels of government. And council has discussed and directed administration to come up with a plan so that we would have a shovel-ready project to take advantage of that type of funding. So I'd like to assure council that what we're looking for tonight is some direction to do that preliminary planning. We're not asking for any commitments to build, nor are we asking for direction to spend a lot of money as it relates to this, but I would like to spend a moment just to run through the project for council and our viewers. With respect to the benefits of a new twin pad arena, this has been on the table not quite as long as our animal shelter, but since 2010 there was a major report done by the Parks and Recreation team with outside consultants, and the recommendation was to look at developing a new twin pad arena for Chatham, and that would replace our Memorial and William K. Erickson arenas when those were ready to be decommissioned. So the time frame was meant to be flexible. You can see that 8 years after that date, we're still using those other arenas. And we don't have a commitment as to when they have to be closed, but that's a major part of the reason. In terms of the reason for twin pad versus single arenas, there's 4 major areas. They're up on the screen. But there's certainly 25 to 30% increase in operating efficiencies if you run one twin pad arena, and you can imagine that there's things like one concession stand, one Zamboni, one refrigeration plant, etc. So it's more efficient. We have increased capacity if you're running major events. It meets new standards for accessibility. And as we've seen over the last year or so, we have changing needs, and some of our older facilities have a really hard time adapting to those. Probably the best example I can use is the women's hockey and dressing room issue, where we had to do some major adaptations and play catch up. This would allow us to get ahead of that curve. Part of the report is to seek direction as to whether council would like us to pursue looking at a 2,200 seat arena. This would be, there are two arenas. One would have approximately 2,000 seats, the other one approximately 200. You can see that there's a number of pros and cons that have been identified here with each of the two projects. That's the major part of the report. It just goes through some in-depth analysis. I'll be candid with council and say that there's some split opinion. There's discussions about the different facilities, whether one is better than the other. It ends up being a political decision. This is a recognition that we're probably looking at a once in a lifetime or once in a generation type of a decision. And if you're looking at any time of trying to get a larger scale facility to handle larger events, this would be the time to consider that option. So you can see here, this is the other considerations with respect to the 4,200 seat arena, the 4,000 in the larger bowl, and again 200 in the smaller. The major disadvantage here is you're looking at an increased operating expense of between 200 and 900,000 per year. We have not gone into a lot of debate in the report, but we have discussed with council in January that we have to continue to monitor our demographic trends and our utilization rates in the arenas to determine, down the road whether we still need 10 arenas in the same distribution in the same locations. At the present time, we recognize if we reduce 2 in Chatham, there's still large amounts of utilization in the Chatham area for using the rinks, and the advantage of having the twin pad versus the 2 single pads is as I've discussed in the report. So the next steps, this is we're looking for some direction from council. With any of these sites, we need to make sure that we would look at what's the appropriate location for the site. We need to look at specifications for one of the 2 types of pads, and we'd have to look at financing options. So again, we're not looking at spending money this evening, but we do need direction on the 4 recommendations so that we can begin the preliminary planning. And we are looking for direction from council as to whether you'd like us to consider a focus on a 2,200 seat capacity or a 4,200 seat capacity. So with that, Your Worship, I'd just like to thank April's team, Evelyn Bish and Ian Clark in particular, did the lion's share of the lifting on preparing the report. So they get the credit for that. Thank you. Oh, and Jeff. Jeff, I beg your pardon. I apologize. Jeff has left us. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
I'll start with Councillor Robertson, followed by Councillor Fluker, followed by Councillor Bondi.
My apologies, Mayor Hope. I was going to move the report when sorry, not move the report, move the recommendations when the time was right. I don't have comments at this time, so.
Okay, if you want to move a recommendation.
I would be happy to move the recommendations found in the supplementary agenda item, and I'd be happy to read them into the record if you'd like.
Yes, please.
All right, so I would move that administration be directed to develop plans to build a twin pad arena in the community of Chatham to replace Memorial Arena and William K. Erickson Arena. That administration complete a site analysis and provide council with a site recommendation. Concurrent with the site analysis, administration develops specifications for the twin pad arena to be presented to council, and that administration present a financing plan to council after exploration of funding options with senior levels of government to address the costs associated with land procurement, site remediation, bidding, design, and construction of the arena. I will have a few comments if just related then to the motion if there's a seconder, which I trust in.
A seconder, Councillor Brock McGregor.
So Mayor Hope, I just think that, we're dealing with a little bit with some concern as to whether or not we should be encumbering the next council. We're not going to be encumbering the next council on anything. What we're doing is we're generating information. And we've been kicking this can down the road an awfully long time, certainly since 2010, probably before that, although I can't speak to the time before I served on this council. And the information found in here and the recommendations that are being driven in this report are consistent with the direction of council over the course of these past 4 years. 2015, We had a series of recommendations that that spoke to, advising council, the council advised administration as to information required for the next arena report to council in order for council to make an informed decision on other arena options. That motion carried. We had, in the next arena report, the administration examined options and costs to upgrading the Memorial Arena. That carried. That we had a report, again in 15, or a recommendation in 15, the administration bring forward a report on deficiencies in all arenas. That carried, and we received that information. We further we had motion in 2016 that only funds to address the minimum upgrades at Memorial Arena be expended based on the findings of the report of the from International Coliseums Company, and that motion carried. And all these motions carried for very logical reason, except because we're heading towards an end game. The long game is that the municipality of Chatham-Kent, in order to be competitive with our counterparts in Ontario, southwestern Ontario in particular, require a twin pad arena for a residents' benefit, for business attraction, and a series of other reasons. This council supported that direction throughout the term of this council, and so we may hear arguments that we shouldn't be deciding what's right for the next council. We're not. What we're doing tonight is that we're looking for information so that we can well equip and arm the next council. This council, if it happens before July, although I'm not certain that we're going to see a whole lot of federal money coming before July, and I think that's Mr. Shropshire has identified that that's going to be one of the requirements of a successful plan. But this puts us ready for a shovel in the ground project at the right time when that time comes, as opposed to leaving us behind. And again, say it again, we have been kicking this can down the road for an awfully long time, and I think tonight is the night that we stop and we ask for the appropriate information that can lead to the future decision in the long game of building a twin pad arena in Chatham-Kent. Thank you.
Councillor Fluker, followed by Councillor Wesley.
Thank you very much. I just want to shout it loud and clear. If I support these 4 recommendations, that does not mean, and I'm looking to you, your worship, or to Mr. Shropshire, that does not mean that Brian Fluker is supporting a twin pad arena to be built.
I'm answering no.
I take it that Mr. Shropshire is answering the same way.
Happy to take direction from council, but what we're looking for tonight is to plan.
The two
any and all of the
keywords.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Any and all of the recommendations require us to come back to council for any direction with respect to spending or a decision about moving forward on any of those projects.
And I think the main point, the most provocative thing that I'm supporting is to develop plans. The 3 words in that first sentence out of all the rest. Now, to Mr. Shropshire, would you bring back a recommendation if there was no provincial or federal funding?
Not unless directed by this council. We have said in the past, if there's 2 different possible sizes there, obviously there's other iterations that could be brought forward, but if we can get 2/3 of the money from a combination of senior levels of government, as most of our neighbors have done in the surrounding areas that have built major facilities of this nature, then we think that's a great deal for the taxpayers in Chatham-Kent. If we can't, we would be not coming forward with any of those recommendations. We think it's only if the senior government funding was to move forward, unless we get different direction from council. But that's our understanding of where council wants to move.
That is the most important answer, that under no circumstances will I support this unless both other levels of government come forth with at least 2/3 of the money. So that I can look somebody in the eye tomorrow in the post office in Tilbury and say, I did not support a twin pad arena being built last night. I just supported that plans be developed. And part of the plans is asking provincial and federal government for money. Am I correct?
You're correct.
100%.
Thank you.
Councillor Wesley, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Your Worship. I share some of the concerns of Councillor Fluker. If everybody is so sure that this doesn't commit us to funding an arena, and it only commits us to a financing plan if there's senior government funding in place, why not put that in one of the recommendations? I find it curious that it's not in there. The other thing that I wanted to just ask, because let's face it, I differ from my council friend in the sense that I'm not running for re-election, and I don't feel comfortable at all pushing something on to whoever may be sitting in this seat next year and could possibly bind their hands. When I look at recommendations 2, 3, and 4, they all refer to bringing something back to the council. Is that this council, or is that the 2019 council?
Your worship, I would expect that it would be the next term of council. If the senior levels of government were to announce plans, hypothetically, next month where they were prepared to give us 2/3 of the funding, this council would have an opportunity to consider that. That's not a decision that we in administration would take unilaterally, but I'm not expecting that to come forward before the next term of council. I think it's going to require several months of work just to try and get all of this in place. If we don't take these steps, the flip side is that if the money was to be made available or there was the grant programs announced, we would not be in a position to take advantage of it, and we would have to say we're not ready at this time. And again, that's completely council's prerogative.
Well, if everything we're saying is true, and that this is not somehow committing this council to spending, whether it be 54 million or 27 million or some other amount, then if you want to get my vote, then on those recommendations, you should be clear that we're going to provide under 2, 3, and 4 that information to the incoming council and not the current one. Although I understand if by some miracle the federal government come out and said, we'll give you 2/3 of the money in October, well, sure, you could bring something back to us. But if you're going to bring 2, 3, and 4 back to this council, I know exactly what's going to happen. Let's not kid ourselves. There'll be somebody make a motion that we go ahead and we do it and we approve it in this council and take it out of the hands of the 2019 council, which is really where the decisions should be. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. That's exactly what would happen. So I'd be prepared to make some amendments to that. And simply the amendment is under 2, 3, and 4, it should be clear that it's coming back to the 2018 council. Save and accept if there's some great thing that happens, which I don't see happening. I don't think we're going to get any money out of the province after June. And there's not going to be much coming from the feds when there's an election there in 2019, maybe at the end of the year. But I would want it clarified that that's coming back to the new council. And under the financing plan, it should also be very clear that the whole idea of this project is dependent on funding from senior levels of government. Let's spell it out there and let everybody know exactly what we're talking about. I'm not in a position to support and spend these kind of dollars this year. And I just know the way things happen. I've seen it too many times that you get so far down the road that nobody can go backwards. And I just see having all of these reports, if they would come to this council, somebody around this table is going to make a motion that we approve it. So that's...
I know Mike wanted to jump in. I'll let Mike jump in here.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just on the funding programs, I think Council is aware that the province and the feds have signed the bilateral agreement. The program itself has not been announced yet. There's been a lot of the high-level information that's been released, but the actual details of the program haven't been released yet. They said it's going to be sometime this summer, and the application process would start in September. So by the time we get to the stage where an application process is done and an approval process, there's no chance it would come back to this council, so you'd be perfectly fine to put some wording in there that would occur.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Hope. Following up from Councillor Wesley, well, first of all, I've got couple of questions. And frankly, first of all, this sounds like like electioneering to me, that all of a sudden we're coming up with this magic arena plan 4 months outside of an election. But that's only my opinion. Or not really, but anyway. Question I have is, in the recommendations, which we can all read are there, but in the comment section it says administration is seeking direction from council if they support a 4,200 seat event center or a 2,200 seat community facility. But I don't see that in the recommendation, so is that, you want that today?
Yes, we would like some direction. We could go to a lot of energy trying to do plans for one versus the other. They do require a different amount of lands. They would require some additional type of changes. So we've, as Councillor Robertson suggested, we've had this type of discussion around chambers and across the community for at least the last 9 years that I've been in Chatham-Kent. So any direction the council could give us would be helpful, and it would be a lot more efficient. So, in the report, it said that we're looking for that type of direction. To be blunt, I think it's a political decision as to whether you want a larger one or a smaller one. The pros and cons and the recommendation clearly point out that there's benefits and cons to both. So ultimately,
where would this direction come from? Would you want somebody to make a motion? Like, it's not in the recommendations.
That's exactly what I'd like.
Okay, so in my opinion on that one, I don't think we have the information necessary to make that decision. Like, there's nothing in here that even tells me how many people show up on Sunday nights to Memorial games or Maroon games, and what is the usage of the arena of one versus the other. So how we make that decision tonight, and frankly, I don't think that should be this council's decision. These recommendations, I think, are fine. You're just doing a little bit of homework, right? And like Councilor Robertson said, you're arming the next council with information. So I'm okay with those. But to follow up on Councillor Wesley, I would like to add a number 5 to this recommendation, and that being that further recommendation from administration be presented not before January 2019, which would ensure that that's the next council that would make the decision on any sort of financial commitment to any arena. Frankly, I don't think we're going to see any provincial money anyway, considering there's an election in 2 weeks. Summer recess, they have to present a budget, so it's unlikely, but stranger things have happened. So
So why is everybody, I mean, listening to the conversation?
Because it's a possibility that these guys come back and say, do you want to spend $50 million in 2 months from now? And then we're all like,
well, I mean, I've just listened, I'm hearing what you say, and you want a number 5, and I've listened to Councillor Wesley talk about putting something in there that says it'll be for the next council. What more do you need for the next council?
Well, just put it in, then that's easy.
Well, we will be amending Councillor Wesley's and put something forward. I was just letting the discussion go so that I can go back to Councillor Wesley and make his amendments where he talked about amending things that he didn't feel comfortable about putting in this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought Councillor Wesley was finished, but if he's going to come back and you're coming back to do those things?
Yeah, he's coming back to discussion, so I just don't want to start adding.
No, that's fine, I'll back off if Councillor Wesley, right, yeah, okay, no, that's great.
So what he's got is what's going to address you, that's why I don't need number 5.
Understood. I'm sorry, I thought maybe Councillor Wesley was finished and just didn't do that, but.
No, I knew what he wanted to do, but I wanted to let everybody else have a discussion.
Okay. Now, my other problem is that we decide on the 4,200 or the 2,200 seat arena, or the plans there for, leading towards. I really think that should be a decision of the next council. That's going to determine the cost of the arena, obviously, well, not the cost, but it's going to be a big difference. So effectively, if we choose the larger or the smaller arena, then we are hamstringing the next council to say, well, we've made the decision on what size of arena. And frankly, I think if we're all very comfortable with letting the next council make the decision on how much money to spend, the site, et cetera, shouldn't they thus choose the size of the arena?
Councillor Bonnie, and I think that's why Councillor Robertson did not put it in his motion. He just said, no, this is what we're asking administration. I know administration asked, well, but I think Councillor Robertson made the recommendation and didn't put anything in about a size, and I think he believes, unfortunately,
well, Mayor,
I believe he can speak for himself, but I believe he thinks that needs to be something of the new council.
You're saying this is Councillor Robertson's motion? I thought this is. Well, yeah, I know, but you're saying Councillor Robertson didn't include it. He didn't write it. Administration wrote it.
But if he made the motion, if he wanted to put 2,000 or 2,200 seat or a 4,200 seat, he would have made that, I believe, made that motion.
Okay, well, following that,
he did not make the motion. So if the motion is silent, which means administration needs to go do a comparator of both.
Yeah, but moving the recommendations, I just asked Don if he was looking for that direction tonight, and he said yes.
Yeah, but if we tell them to go do both directions, then they go do both directions.
Go do both directions.
Because we're not deciding one or the other. We're telling them to go do both.
Okay, so if
If
I
it's
would
silent,
ask that Don come back with, Mr. Shropshire, come back with direction on both sides, would I have to make that a motion and have it voted on?
no,
Or
that's what they'll go do.
that's a gentleman's agreement, it's gonna happen, right? Okay, I'll
Okay.
trust you on that one, thank you. All right, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor. Unlike Councillor Bondi, I think it is time to move on a report. As much as it is 4 months close to an election, we've been pushing this around from what I remember. I remember having a conversation with one of the councillors prior to being elected last time about a twin pad arena. So the simple discussion around here has been pushed around and pushed around and pushed around, and now we're just wanting to push it off to another council again in another term. So I honestly think that, you know, we're put here to make decisions and provide direction. I also have concerns that we are nearing a time when we have to meet accessibility issues within our arenas. I think it's 7 years out. Would that be correct, Dr. Rita? 7 years, I think. If I'm correct, I think it's 2025 that we have accessibility needs we have to make. We have 2 arenas that are in very bad shape and definitely need replacing. And I think, I guess I won't say that because it would sound very rude of me to say that we should all grow a pair and make a decision. But I think honestly the making the final decision should come back to the next council simply because we are so close to an election. But I think we need to give direction. And personally, I look at the different options and the costs, and I consider how close we are to Windsor, how close we are to London. I fear that we won't have the same draw being so close to other close facilities that are hosting major concerts, and we would have to find somebody pretty major to run this facility to be able to do that. I can completely support sending out the direction for the 2,200 twin pad arena in Chatham and get the new facility to replace those two arenas. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at. So I'll see where the amendments go, but I'd be quite happy to set a motion to put direction for the smaller arena and have them bring back the report. And I think at that point, no matter when the report comes back, if the new council wants to change the size of the arena, that because there's some major windfall, then they can do that. We have many, many other things within all of Chatham-Kent that we need to deal with and we need to take care of, and we do have other arenas that we need to maintain within our communities. So I think we need to be somewhat realistic. We're very lucky to have a casino coming here. We're very lucky to have the Bradley Center that is very close. It would be very nice to have an arena that is there, because I suspect there will also be concerts that will take place at a new casino. So maybe not the size that are being done in Windsor and London and Toronto, but I do fully agree that the Chatham does need a new facility in there. So I think we need to give that direction. Just the cost and looking down, and maybe, Dawn, you can tell me, in order to do your conceptual drawings, and if we were to send you away to do both, do you need to have the conceptual drawings in place? So one's like $264,000, the other's $132,000. So if we send you away to do both, do we have to add those totals together in order to get both to come back to council, or is it going to be approximately, or would it be one or the other?
Through your worship, we've made a commitment tonight that we're not going to be spending any money as a result of tonight's direction unless council changes what we've discussed already. So we're not going to go out and spend $400,000. What we would need to do is to look at things like, where is there an appropriate location in Chatham-Kent that this could be considered? There's a number of other similar things. So we'd be doing some preliminary planning. Before we'd go out and look at conceptual drawings, I would ask council to make a determination as to which size you wanted, because I would not want to have money spent on both of the different plans. I don't think that's going to be the major decision point. There's some things that we can help council get to that point and give us some clearer direction before we have to spend that kind of money.
Okay, and just to add to that, then I think that the need is there. I don't necessarily believe in putting good money on bad if we've got two arenas in very bad shape that need to be replaced. I think that we need to move on these situations in all of our arenas and with our master plan to make sure we get all of our arenas caught up to code before we're caught in another situation of having to close the door because we're not accessible. And when we get to that point, I'd be very pleased to move the 2,200-seat arena facility for this community and go from there and bring that report back.
Councillor Leclerc.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Don. Yeah, a lot of the questions have been asked. I will support the investigating going forward. Don, you can't answer this tonight, but maybe we can get a report a little bit later. The number of players, is it increasing, decreasing? You know, and maybe there could be a report brought back to council in the near future or next time we talk about the arena. Where are the hot spots? Where's more hockey in Dresden, more hockey in Wheatley? Just maybe to give some perspective. But first of all, are the numbers increasing? Are they decreasing? You know, if we're losing players because of cost of playing hockey and going to soccer, like that may lean us to building an arena just, you know, as we're going down, we're downsizing. We do need a facility like we've talked about. So, you know, just to give us, which I won't be making a decision on, but, you know, the next council maybe can see some of those numbers. Ever since I've been here on council, you know, we've been talking about the arena, you know, junior A teams coming in. My frustration was always, it was the municipal taxpayers that would have to really foot the bill for a junior A team, and that really, really frustrates me. I would really love it, and there's no way we could ever do it, but would like a user of our arena, whether it's hockey or, you know, an organization that would want to plan 50 events. I'd love somebody to have some skin in the game. You know, that's to me shows, you know, respect, and, you know, and then that's a better decision made by us. But once if there's no skin in the game, well, it's easy for everybody to walk out. So that's one of my frustrations there. I would love it somehow, Don, if you could, you know. We've heard some reports earlier today. We got some people to, you know, put skin in the game, and we've seen it over the years. And only last question, and I think you just alluded to it. We're not hiring a consultant to do any of this. Like, it'll be all in-house, Don?
We believe we have the expertise in-house to do the analysis. I can come back to council if we run into a snag in that regard, but I capture your thought, I believe, is that you'd like a report back before any further recommendations go on the size of the facility regarding utilization rates, whether the numbers are going up and down in terms of different players. I know that Mr. Mailing had done a report to council, I think it was about 2.5, 3 years ago. I don't have all the figures off the top of my head, and it's not the same for all of our different groups. Girls hockey, as we've reported back in a couple of months ago, is continuing to grow. So, I mean, we can come back with a fulsome report that can help guide council. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Herman.
Thank you very much. I just want to preamble by saying there is broad-based support for a project like this in the people I've spoken to. Be it 2,200 or 4,200, that's a conversation that I don't think this council should be having. I think that's a decision for the next council. What I was curious about, and it's not up there, is part of these recommendations an exit strategy for Erickson and Memorial? What happens next to them?
Thank you. Through your worship, the plan would be, as we've come back to council and discussed a few times, certainly in the master plan, the plan would be to decommission Erickson and Memorial Arena and replace that with a twin pad arena. The challenge is you don't know, when you exactly have to repurpose them. I've heard Memorial Arena compared to a World War II bunker. It's a huge amount of concrete and steel, and I don't think it's any danger of falling down. But by the same token, if you talk to any of the folks that are there and the teams and so on, the dressing rooms are in rough shape. There's a whole bunch of other things that just are not fitting up. So I don't think we're waiting for the building to fall down. We come back to council and say, here's the time frame, here's when the funding's going to make sense, and we would be recommending we decommission. We certainly do not need 5 arenas in Chatham. 3 seems to make sense at the present time based on the utilization rates.
Okay, but I am concerned that with the usage of the term decommissioned as opposed to demolition, because I am concerned that we build 2 new arenas and then we end up with 2 other, well, taxpayer-funded something or another's because somebody has a bright idea.
Again, council will have the opportunity to approve or reject any recommendations that are coming forward. The only thing that I can recall in the last 9 years that's come forward is we actually had one private business person that was interested in turning it into a combination box lacrosse or private sector, and they were interested in perhaps buying the facility. But the conversation within the recreation department has not been to repurpose that for any other type of recreation purposes, at least not in the last 9 years.
Okay. I'm going to tip my hand a little bit. I kind of lean towards the 2,200 seat setup. My concern is I'm afraid we're looking at this as strictly as a twin pad opportunity, as opposed to a potential for more of a community hub type setup. And I was wondering if you'd be looking at other potential services and amenities to be moved, co-located in that setup. As an example, the Chatham branch of the library.
At the present time, that has not been considered for the following reason. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan suggested that if we're going to build a large multi-sport facility that at the time included a twin pad arena, the recommendation was to build that in a location that would also allow you to have a number of sports fields adjacent to the building. So things like soccer pitches and baseball diamonds and so on. So that type of facility would likely be requiring lots of space. We're talking, like 50 plus acres. And if you go down that road, you're looking at outside the downtown core and so on. That's not traditionally a place where the libraries want to be. They want to be where there's a high degree of traffic and volume of people. It certainly could be considered. I know that Lakeshore did that. They basically built this large multi-sport facility in what used to be a cornfield. So we could certainly go down that road if that's council's wish.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Herman.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Actually, Councillor Thompson had hit right on one of my points as well, the community hub. When we look at a facility of this magnitude and what we need, certainly a hub is in the high degree of location, and traffic. However, this is as well. And I think that's what worked for the Memorial Arena all these years, is it was the location of the community, of, the accessibility, of walking, if it was 2 blocks, 3 blocks, or 4 blocks, just a walk to that. I think what I would see, and I certainly support the fact that it's very important for this council to give that directions to staff, and I think it's respectful for the next council, which I won't be here, obviously. I've made that clear. Not that I don't want to. I love you all. It's my decision, of course, but not to go there. I just think that it's very important as an age-friendly community is location. One thing that I made a promise to not only the people that we represent in Chatham and all of Chatham-Kent is that location. And Southside, for one, Memorial had that location, and I would hope, and I see there is a list there, and I'm glad you're looking at plans for different locations. Southside Chatham is one that has lost a lot of different amenities, and to lose one more would be, I think it's very important that we continue to have those amenities to those communities and the south side of Chatham, which to the south of that would be my South Kent community that would have that advantage as well. I would ask that, certainly I think, it was mentioned earlier that, we're making a decision here just to give the direction. We're not making the decision to build. And, but when you come back and council that might be here, the councilors that might be here in the future, I just do ask that, you know, you look at those locations on the south side, that you consider that that is very important to the community of Chatham and the south side residents. So with that being said, it's not right now, I hear a lot of, why is it not my community instead of Chatham? If I can only say to the community, those residents that are wondering that, why isn't it our community that is being built and it's always in Chatham? You know, honestly, it's not always in Chatham. I'm very thankful for being a part of South Kent and having the opportunity of building things in South Kent, but I see the deficiency in 5 arenas in the city of Chatham, and I think this is the opportunity. It's not about because we think Chatham gets everything. It's about, it's a need today to get rid of these extra assets that are costing you, the taxpayer, so much more to keep those old buildings going. So it's not because it's a pie in the sky idea that we want it. It's about because it's a need that you, the residents, deserve it, but it's about making sure it's cost effective and making sure it's the right timing and the right opportunity to do it. So I will support giving direction. I remember, you know, after being 15 years, we did have all those wholesome reports about what size. Evelyn Bish's team came back forward, and we looked at this, and do we want a 4,200 seat or 2,200 seat? You know, is the OHL coming or isn't it coming? You know, it's been spun around way too much. The OHL is not coming, and that has been made clear. I think, quite frankly, certainly 2,200 probably is the more realistic financial goal of Chatham-Kent. And again, I appreciate the fact that it's going to be some amendments written by Councillor Wesley with regards to, you know, we do need to see some specifics on that. So I'm looking forward to those amendments from Councillor Wesley. So those are my points. I thank you to the staff. I think it's important that you get the direction so you get that wholesome report. And whether it becomes political or not, so be it. Let it be political. And do you support our arena or don't you? That will be the political question that your constituents should ask you. Thank you.
Councillor Vergooderen.
I'm going to be very brief. I think everything's been addressed. But the only question I had for Don was, what is it going to cost us to do item 4 and get all the information? What is that going to cost us, whether we go ahead or not? What would that cost us to do all that? Because to get money from the government, you're going to have some plans of some kind. So somebody's going to be spending a lot of money on, we just went through it with the animal shelter, so you know what that costs. So this is going to be in excess of that, I'm sure. And this is what I was getting at. I would like to know the cost of that. And, you know, a third of our councillors are not going to be here. Maybe me too, I don't know. But you know something? I guess what I'm getting at is that we're making decisions for the next council, and we're telling them what we want, I guess. Now, it's what it sounds like to me, because it's going to come, you're going to draw a set of plans to get financing, right? So you're going to have to spend a lot of money to do that. Unless I'm wrong, I don't know.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for the question. So what we're talking about today and what we believe the current recommendations that are up on the screen are telling administration that you'd like us to go and do the preliminary work. I believe the activities that are currently up there are done only by our existing staff, and that would be basically staff time. I can't give you an estimated number of hours or what that costs us. There's a significant amount of work in it. That's why I'm interested in trying to narrow it down. But if council looks for more information, that's fine. We're certainly prepared to do take council's direction on that. If we were to go out and do things like to make plans, that's not something that would be done internally. If we have to enlist the needs of an architect to come in and draw the plans and to do that design work, that would be something that would have to come back to council as part of a tender process or an RFP type process, and they would have to be hired, but council would have to be in a position to approve that. We're not getting that direction here today. What we are getting direction is, would you like us to consider a twin pad arena? The commitment was made to you in January that we would come back to you with this recommendation. That's what we tried to do. We're looking for some direction as to whether you'd like us to take the next steps or basically keep our powder dry and stand down and not take advantage of that opportunity.
Councillor Sum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got the supplementary report on, I guess, Thursday or Friday, and I read it over, and I spent the weekend writing out all sorts of things because it was really a generational kind of decision that has to be made at some point in time. But, you know, after I've thought about it, having been an advocate of a dual ice pad, for more than well over a decade, long before 2010, back then it was assumed that it would be beside the Thames Campus Arena, which was built with a compressor for 2 ice pads, and that's where it should have been, and that's would have saved a whole hell of a lot of money because you already had an ice pad with a compressor, and you only needed 1 Zamboni, and then you just needed to add 1 arena, not 2. But now we're faced, that was covered with a healthplex, and that opportunity just isn't there anymore. So the only opportunity now is to look to the future and see what is most appropriate for Chatham-Kent by way of a dual pad. So I'm having looked through all this, it's so patently obvious that you're not going to get any provincial money in June, which is next week, of 2018. In fact, they're not even going to sit again probably after the election until September, and you don't even know which party it is. It might be one who says we're not spending, it may be one who says we're going to spend so much and get a greater deficit that we'd have trouble borrowing because their bond rating would be affected by it. So, you know, we don't need to do any of that right now. What we need to do is get to the point where we give direction to administration to bring back a report from some of the things you've heard tonight. I mean, I don't think there's enough in the report right now. I don't know what the use is at the standard use is at a Maroon game. I don't know how many people come in. I mean, I've sat there and I've looked, and sometimes it's 400, sometimes it's 650. Playoff game might be higher. If you have Brian Wiseman going to set a record, it gets to 1,200, but that's a while back. I guess I'm dating myself. So I think what we need to do is do this in an appropriate way. Frank asked the question on cost of the planning. I was going to ask that. I think it's a logical thing to do. I don't think your list is extensive enough on locations. I think there's all sorts of things that we need to hear and need to be done. However, before Councillor Wesley put up his hand, I had already prepared an amendment, and I'm going to support Councillor Wesley if he says in paragraph number 4 that administration present a financing plan to council dependent on funding options from the senior levels of government. And I think we should just make it really clear, like someone else said, that we should have a paragraph 5 that says an administration report to council on their plan in January 2019. So we set a time frame, you got a target, and we finally get to the point where we make a decision on this. Now, it may be 4,200, and it may be 2,200, and what if the province and the feds say you're not getting a dime? I think at that point you still have a decision that you've got to make on Erickson Northside, which we've been putting off since 2009 at least. And before Mr. Shropshire was here, there were suggestions on using it in another way, either for indoor soccer, and at that time there was in fact an inline skating floor that had been acquired for use for inline hockey. There's always been an ice problem there. When the ice is first put in, it doesn't move out to the boards as quickly as it should until you get colder weather. So there's a gap, and I've always thought it was a liability issue. But I'm going to support it if we make it dependent upon senior level funding, and we make the report come back in January 2019. That's it for me. Otherwise, I can't support it. And I sure want to see us go forward because the other buildings are long past their time. I think you could probably still survive with Memorial for a period of time because I'm the one who always says that it's built like Hitler's bunker. It's just solid concrete and steel like you wouldn't believe. But every building comes to a time, and that may be it. So that's all I have to say about it. I just think we should move forward in the lines with what Councillor Wesley said, and I've been even more specific about. And that would solve the whole problem, and it's anyone who says it's an election issue, an election ploy, or election football, that would end tonight. We'd make real cool, practical decisions in January.
Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. And Councillor Solomon is right. Memorial's like a bunker. Ideally, no one wants to use it. So I do agree with a lot of the comments made tonight, and I respect Councillor Herman's opinion that Chatham doesn't get everything. And when we look at infrastructure like this, it is for everybody. It's for everyone in Chatham-Kent. It's a little late now, but my kids were in Blenheim tonight having swimming lessons. I've played in hockey tournaments in Tilbury and Dresden and used infrastructure all over, and I don't think that's uncommon. That's the way our community is designed. That's the way our community is built. And we should celebrate that, and we should enjoy the small pockets that our community has. I do think that it's very obvious that we need this replacement and we need this renewal. If you spend any time in Memorial and Erickson, it's been obvious for a long time. And we've really seen a good example tonight with the animal shelter that the cost to build keeps increasing. And if we don't act and have an opportunity to take advantage of funding and take advantage of timing, we're not only sacrificing opportunity in our community, we're making a bad financial decision. We need to do this sooner rather than later. And we were all elected in 2014 to make decisions and to fulfill that mandate to the end of our term, save the lame duck period. And I think we need to do that tonight. I think there's no problem in going away and getting a comparator between the two options, understanding that's less efficient, but I think that's the responsible decision to make. So I hope that we can move this the way it is this evening. I don't think we have to wait till January to get it back if something occurs earlier. That's the only part that I wouldn't support. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to see information on both options come back, get a little more information, and make sure that whoever makes that decision has all the information they can make to make what is a once-in-a-generation decision for this community.
Councillor Caniff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I think around the horseshoe, it looks like, yes, we agree that there's needs of a new arena to replace the two. It's a matter we need to be ready. It's been brought up that the provincial and federal money is a key component to this, and I don't think there would be support around here if we had to pay 100% of it. So we need to get ready. This is what this does. It starts getting us ready. I'm just concerned in the time frame. Mr. Turner said that we're opening for applications to September, and I don't know when those close. And Mr. Councillor Solomon said January. Does that leave us out? And I don't know. From that perspective, is it a 6-month process, 8? But the key there is we need to be ready for that fund, because the last time we had the opportunity was 2008. We missed that. We look around. There's a lot. Most every other community in this province, it seems, has a nicer facility than us, and I hear that on a constant basis. When teams from other communities come here, they say, "Really? You got this is a nice municipality, and you've got this as an arena." And we're making this. This is as we talked about, it's a generational thing. This is a decision that's going to impact Chatham-Kent for the next 40 to 50 years. So tonight to say, well, it's a 22 or 42, we need a lot more information on that before we make any decision. We don't need to handcuff the next council on the sizing as well. Thanks.
I guess just trying to follow the conversation tonight. Mike, would you like to respond to Councillor Caniff's question on the issue?
Sure, through you, Your Worship. Those deadlines are just wording that was put out based on when the bilateral agreement was signed. Once the program gets released, then we'll know the specifics on when the application period is. But until the program actually comes out, we're just kind of speculating. So hopefully we'll see it soon and we'll really know when we need to be ready. The one thing that is important is that this is a 10-year program that they've announced. Now, we all know that there may be some changes in the government, and both sides could be potentially different at federal level as well. But the 10-year program had funding sources in all the different programs over each year for each of the 10 years. So it is possible that if the first year we weren't ready, that there is funding in the second year, so that is a possibility as well.
I guess the only comment I want to make, and I think a lot of people know my vision of where we want to go. I mean, I'm not ready to make a 4,200 seat arena because I hear there's too many cautiousness going on, and I think let's leave it for the new council. But I mean, we have a new user that's going to be in an area, may look at holding concerts, which helps those other nights We haven't had that full discussion with that other potential, as you indicated, the casino. So there's other things we need to do, and we need to explore those opportunities. I want to remind council that, you know, this council has done a great job in getting our debt down. We reduced, you know, our debt level. We put ourselves in a good financial position. We've been dealing with our infrastructure. So if you remember when the Y came forward and the Sportsplex came forward, we got money from the federal government. We were prepared. They were prepared with information to build. I think what council is trying to do is make sure we have that same information in our hands so that when we make an application, we know what we want to build and we can be ready. I think there's some good stuff on our side. Number one, while everybody else has got all that money, we were busy fixing our roads and our bridges and doing our water lines and everything else, all that essential stuff that we need to do. We've been doing that. So I think we're going to position ourselves in the right place. It's just making one of the components that is missing is making sure we have the relevant information to move forward. And it might be, you know, I heard about the question about Erickson. I heard people say the Ericksons, the bones are pretty good on that thing, but what you need to do is just decommission the freezing units underneath, and you can play pickleball seems to be a big thing now. Pickleball in there, you can play indoor soccer in there, you can play flag football, you can play a number of indoor sports that are less costly for families to participate. Because remember, there's always two. And I like the fact that they're talking about building for the next generation, because I'm seeing this in not a 50-year lifespan. I'm looking at a 75-year lifespan that we can build forward. So I agree, you know, in the midterm right now, let's look at both spectrums, both the large and the small, collect data, and then when it comes to the new council, there should be no reason why they shouldn't be making a decision. All the homework is done. I seen in the report, Don's report talked about 2010. If I remember correctly, you know, getting a little older, but in 2006, this whole thing was talked about with a double ice pad arena, also a swimming pool, and all this other stuff that we wanted to build here. And so this double ice pad surface isn't just something that's new. I'm not going to predict whether an OHL team or not. I want to build an arena that has ample seating. We have a historical club that's been playing hockey in the Memorial Arena called the Maroons for years, and have made this community proud. Wouldn't it be nice if they could actually go into a facility that they can be proud of, and you know that it's proud to be a part of a team with new recruits and young players coming, playing in a new rink versus the older one. So I think we have to stretch our minds not to think about today, but think about the broader perspective. So, Councillor Wesley, you had a couple of amendments which I thought you wanted to bring forward, and I'll deal with those, and then we'll see where this takes us.
Thank you, Worship. These amendments I'm going to put forward, and there's two, really tie in with everything that I've heard around this horseshoe, from what Councillor Solon was saying to what the mayor just said to the other concerns. This is not going to stop any of this from going forward. It simply will put it in, I think, the right perspective, in the sense that everything will still go forward, but there's going to be some time frames, and I really want the major decision to be in the hands of the new council. This is not anti-hockey, anti-arena, and just to show my age, I was one of the most vocal supporters when the Hunter brothers wanted to bring their hockey team here and build a new arena, so I voted in support of that. So the first amendment would be, and I'm trying to keep this short and simple for Meredith, that recommendation 2, 3, and 4 be amended by adding the next term of in front of the word council. That's the first amendment. Okay, I'll just repeat it for Meredith. That recommendation 2, 3, and 4 be amended by adding the next term of in front of the word council. The second amendment, based on comments from Councillor Solomon, is that recommendation number 4 just have added on the end, and I'm willing to listen to other wording, but recommendation number 4 be added on the end the following words: project approval is dependent on funding from senior levels of government. And I hope that kind of ties in with what Councillor Solman was looking for.
Sweet. I heard what you said, but I want to make sure it's right up here.
Yeah.
So we can move forward. I guess I want to ask Councilor Robertson, are you okay with some of these amendments that are being made? Because you made the main motion.
No, I'm not okay with them. So I'll vote against the amendments, and then we'll deal with if the amendments pass, we'll deal with the motion as presented.
So that's how you need to know, that whether it's being received as a friendly amendment or not. So these are just secondary motion amendments that are being placed.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I just find that comment interesting because everybody around here said that this council is going to deal with it, and that's exactly what these motions are doing. It's saying what everybody said they were going to do. Now they're saying, well, I'm not going to vote for it, so that tells me they weren't going to do that to begin with.
I don't think I ever said that.
Okay.
Did I? Did I say that? No. Just to allow the record to show that I didn't say that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I asked if it was a friendly amendment. That's what I'm trying to deal with, whether I have to deal with an amendment point of view or whether I deal with the main motion. I'm going to ask council. It's been recommended that the next term of council be in place in front of the word. I would ask council to consider, it's been moved by Councillor Wesley. Is there a seconder to Councillor Wesley's? Seconded by Councillor Herman. I would ask, are you in favor of this amendment or not? I would ask you to consider the amendment that's being put in front of you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 11-3.
Okay, now we'll deal with the next one that talked about in item number 4, Meredith, if you wouldn't mind. Add the recommendation number 4 added to the project approval dependent on the funding of senior levels of government. That's been seconded by Councillor Fluker. I'm going to ask council to consider this recommendation before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-1.
And I'll deal with the whole main motion as amended, putting those subject lines in. I'd ask council to consider the amendment. Motion as amended. You can just put the original motion back up, Meredith, if you want. So who flicks the switch? You? Okay. And it's been moved and seconded. And I would ask council now to consider the recommendation now before you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-1.
Our next item on the agenda deals with finance, budget, and information technology, Bell Fiber. Oops, sorry. I'm reading your part. Go ahead.
Item 17A, Bell Fiber Investment.
Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
I'll move the recommendation.
It's been moved by Councillor Brock McGregor and seconded by Councillor Solman. Any comments or questions from council? Councillor Oche, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just kind of an odd thing happening here. They're willing to pay for 2 employees for us to have. Why wouldn't they just use a couple of their own employees?
Helen?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. What it is our processes of permits. So what the 2 full-time employees are to help us
be able to process 38,000 permits approximately. So it's so that the project can continuously move forward.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, I would ask council now to consider the recommendation now before you. And I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-0.
Let's deal with our next item.
Item 17B, tax sale write-offs, March 14th, 2018 tender.
So move. Councilor Verkutteren. Moves it. Seconder. Councilor Leclerc. Comments, questions? Seeing none, I would ask you to consider the recommendation now before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-0.
Let's deal with infrastructure and engineering services. First item.
Item 18A, 2018 Columbarium Reserve, Maple Leaf Cemetery, Chatham.
Councilor Sullivan, please.
I'd move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Seconded by Councilor Oche. Comments, questions? Jeff, being just sat there, I wanted to ask a question, and I know I'm going to go a little bit off. Oh, is it Colin? Sorry, Colin. Just I was at Decoration Day on yesterday with the Legion, and I know you're talking about columbariums here, but you're talking about the cemetery in itself, and I wanted to raise the question with you from the road to the monument they have there at the cemetery. Because the veterans and that are becoming older, and on Decoration Day being able to get up to that, can you look at plans of doing something where it creates a smoother pathway, whether it's concrete, whether it's asphalt, so that our veterans aren't having to fall when they do Decoration Day and get close to that cemetery to lay wreaths? They've approached me on Sunday, and I said I would raise it to you, administration, today.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. It's certainly something that we can consider. It's right now, it's been a grass lane for as long as I can recall, and but that's certainly something that we can investigate and perhaps maybe get some input from the Legion itself and see what they would prefer, and then see if we can organize.
I see the age of the parade now, and it is getting more difficult to them, and I think we need to accommodate as they continue to do Decoration Day. And a number of our communities is supporting them simple ways, like just being able so they don't fall. So I would raise that with you. Other than that, is no questions. I would ask council to consider the recommendation now before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 18B, Wallaceburg Transfer Station way bills.
Councilor Wesley.
So moved, Your Worship.
Seconder, Councilor Carmen McGregor. Comments, questions? And seeing none, I would ask you to consider the recommendation now before you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-0. Sorry.
Our next item on the agenda deals with closed session report. Councilor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and I'd move through the mayor the closed session report of May 28th. Not present at the meeting were Councilors Leclerc, Foz, Myers, and Pinsnell. Council received information on labor relations or employee negotiations with regard to negotiation updates, Section 2392D of the Municipal Act, and consideration of a request under Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act with regard to election candidate information requests, Section 23923, Municipal Act 2001.
It's been moved by Councilor Carmen McGregor, seconder, Councilor Wesley. All those in, I ask council to consider the recommendation before you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-0.
Next item on the agenda is approval of communicated items. So moved by Councilor Carmen McGregor, second by Councilor Leon Leclerc. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. Non-agenda business items, Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So not too long ago, although I can't name the date, this council passed a bylaw related to burn permits. And so I've had some questions from people that have permits. And the response, so in certain instances, if a person has a valid permit and the neighbor complains, a fire station shows up and they still put out the fire. And so it sounds like to me that the only thing that the permit is doing is alleviating the ability to levy a fine against the homeowner. And I don't think that was the intention of this council. Frankly, I don't think I voted in favor of the burn permit, just to be clear. But I believe that's the case. Through yourself, Mayor Hope, to I believe Chief Case, if he could speak to that, because I think it's important for this council to hear that in particular, because it's only May, and we're going to be dealing with this for the next 3 months. We ought to be equipped with the best information possible, and we ought to probably provide some advice, direction, if we're able to, related to what the intent of council was in passing the burn permit bylaw.
Mr. Case.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're talking about recreational burn permits, which came in 2016. There's about 330 been issued to date in this year. So the main focus of the burn permit is one of safety. So if you're going to have a burn permit in your house, you are expected to do an assessment. Thank you. An assessment of where your burn pit will be. And the guidelines state you should be 25 feet away from vegetation, a boundary line, or a building. So you come in and you actually make a declaration of that's where your burn permit will be. But the bylaw also states that if your fire, which you're allowed to have up to 1 a.m., if it should cause annoyance or disrupt the normal enjoyment of a neighbour's home, then the fire must be extinguished. Most people, we find, express that displeasure by dialing 911 and a fire truck is sent out. That puts the captain in a very difficult position because the captain doesn't want to get into a neighbour dispute negotiation. So there and then, usually we'll say to the owner, and to be fair, the vast majority of the times the owner is the person who extinguishes the fire. And I have to advise councillors, we don't get a lot of backlash from people. We don't get a lot of complaints and things. People are reasonable, and when they're approached to say there's been a complaint, they usually put the fire out. So to say that the fire going out is automatic is roughly true. However, one thing I would say is if you've got people coming to you concerned that their fires are being extinguished, then there is a way they can come back and speak to fire prevention, and perhaps there's ways we can look at it. But the ultimate line is, according to the bylaw, is if your neighbour doesn't like you having a campfire and says it's causing a disturbance and they dial 911, then we will turn up and ask for the fire to be extinguished. The main reason being is because we don't want to get into an arbitration. And secondly, there's always the chance that if we don't put it out, by the time the truck returns to the station, it will get called back again, and that's tying up a frontline appliance. So I hope that gives you some answers, Councillor.
It does, Chief Case, thank you. And through Mayor Hope, to yourself, what's the fine that's levied if a individual does not have a burn permit and a fire station's called to put out the fire?
I have to confess that my colleague advised me it's 250, but to date I don't think we've enforced any. That's why I was unsure how much it was. At the moment, we're taking a very softly approach to try and deal with these matters.
But with that type of fine structure, still probably a good valid reason to keep a permit.
$20 as opposed to 250, I would agree, sir.
Very well, thank you.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Yes, I just wanted to remind everybody, we had a really wonderful forum a few weeks ago, and as I'd mentioned at that time that we would bring up mention again of National Health and Fitness Day, which will be taking place on June 2nd. It is an initiative to make Canada the fittest nation on earth, so and provides an opportunity for all citizens to get up and get out and get active. So on Saturday, June 2nd, get your kids and your parents and get outside and get active. And we've got a few suggestions on how you might do that. Let your kids plan activities for the day. If you've never played Grounder or Manhunt, apparently you're missing out. I've not played those. There are a dozen of activities and ideas, though, at www.participation.com. Or head to the playground. Chatham-Kent has over 166 unique locations for play. Make a splash at the pool or the splash pads throughout Chatham-Kent. Get together with neighbors for a game of all-age ball hockey, races, egg on a spoon, three-legged race or sack race, I haven't played those in years, scavenger hunt, pool party, or a game for soccer. Run, jump, climb at the 11th Annual CK Youth Festival on Saturday from 11 to 3 at Tecumseh Park. There'll be obstacle courses, bouncy castles, face painting, and CK Rec player rangers, Super Kids CK, and many other activities to engage your imagination. Go for a walk around the neighborhood and discover a new park or a ravine. And you can visit Walk CK for schedules of free monthly group hikes on local trails, or tour the community using Chatham-Kent Interactive Mapping System to find bike paths and routes. Take your dog for a long walk, or if you don't have a dog, take your neighbor's dog for a walk and enjoy the local dog parks or friendly trails with your four-legged friend. Introduce yourself maybe to something new like bocce ball or cricket. Spread the word, engage all Canadians in National Health and Fitness Day, and spread the word on Facebook and Twitter at pound NHFD can, or pound Get Moving, or CK PHU for public health. And there's always more information you can find on the National Health and Fitness Day by visiting www.nhfdcan.ca, which stands for, again, National Health and Fitness Day Canada.ca.
Thank you. Any further? And seeing none, I'm going to move to the reading of the bylaws. First and second reading, so moved by Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Wesley. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. And shall council go into committee? Seeing not. Third and final reading, so moved by Councillor Fluker, seconded by Councillor Solomon. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? All those, if any, it's carried. On the resolution of council, Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I would to be held on Monday, June 11th at 2018, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
It's been moved by Councillor Carmen McGregor, seconded by Councillor Bondi. All those in favor? Opposed, any? It's carried. Good night.